Hello and welcome to another edition of Indiepocalypse Radio. I'm back here. Of course, I'm back here because I'm your host, Andrew of the aforementioned Indiepocalypse Radio. I'm going to try something new this time, which is something. Here we go. I'm bringing it up. I'm going. Where it is. I'm just going to type clock into this thing, into this web browser, and I'm going to. That was a stupid answer. I should have typed timer into it. Anyway, I'm your host, Andrew. I host the show that is called Indiepocalypse Radio, where we talk to people who are game art adjacent increasingly. You know, this is Indiepocalypse, of course, being the monthly anthology zine thing about video games. That all said, we are here. I got to obsess with my clock. I'm bad at timing this, but I'm like, what if I was a real radio show host and I timed my segment so I don't run over or then worry I'm running over and run late or run under. But we are here with our first guest, who you may know from the video game. I'm trying to reach out beyond just people who are in this, partially because I've actually had most of the people who have been in this and who have answered my email and willing to be on the show. So we've got someone here from the expanded universe of video games, video game culture. I don't know what you, the editor and the probably multi-hat hyphenate wearer of No Escape. It's Kyle Haltner. Kyle, how are you doing today?
Hello, I am doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Oh, there is not a thing here. I was like, this timer thing. I thought I was like, yes, I'm going to hit this thing and it's going to start. But it wanted me to like set the time first, and then I clicked the little digital display, and then it goes. But it's going now. Perfect.
Incredible. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
How you doing? I already asked that. That's my. Uh, I'm not one for small talk, but it's how you doing is a good way to say yes. You and I are having a conversation now.
For sure. No,
Uh,
I'm doing all right. It's uh didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so pretty tired coming into this, but all of a sudden I feel great, feel
oh, perfect.
energized, feel ready to go.
Yes, talking to people, it helps you. It wakes you up. I got tons of sleep. I got like 10 hours of sleep. I woke up at 6 or so, which is about roughly when I usually get up to go to work. But then I was like, what if I went back to sleep? And then I did. And then I got
Hey,
up like
living the good life.
3.5 hours later. I was like, I got errands to do before this show. Uh,
Fantastic.
for like one, not a real one, just getting rid of trash. Uh, but nope, never mind. That's not a butt. That's not a butt transition. Um, Speaking of getting rid of trash, you take out
Uh-huh.
the trash that is video games sometimes on your website. No Escape, maybe. What is
Uh
if people are unfamiliar? What is No Escape?
No Escape is a video game and digital culture website, noescapevg.com. That is V as in Victor, G as in golf.
Or
At the
V as
end.
in video, G as in game, maybe.
Well, there is that. Listen, I've worked so long at call centers that I
Yeah,
just do the NATO alphabet
yeah.
by
No, I,
memory.
I, I hear people do that over the phone now where I work, and I'm not used to it. But that is so you're taking the hard stance and saying video games is two words.
Uh, yeah. There are exceptions that I've made. For
Yeah.
example, I recently published a post by the deephell.com's skeleton
Yes, friend of the
where
show.
absolutely where they basically did an entire post where they just put video games in with one word, and I edited that to be two words, and then they sent me back a new draft with all video games one word again. And I was like, I'm not fighting here for this. Let's just do video games one word.
And I thought about this today or yesterday as I was making my post. As I was doing my little game diaries, and I realized I just do either of them. It just depends on my mood. I don't really care.
Yeah, it's one
I'll
of those discourses that
right.
is so critically important to everybody in the space as a whole.
And then I realized I've probably done in a single piece of writing, I've probably written it both ways. Because
Nice.
it's um I don't know. Is it arbitrary? Who
I think it might
cares?
be a little arbitrary. I don't think it matters, to be perfectly honest. Like, that's my real stance on it.
Yeah.
Is I don't genuinely think it matters if you spell it in one word or two words. I've seen people spell it a whole host of ways. Some of which are most of which are joking. I would hazard a guess, but yeah, no. So No Escape is just a digital culture website that mostly covers video games, but also does other stuff. We've had, I think over 30 to 40 contributors who've written about all sorts of things from voyeurism and a popular Netflix show to, just talking about the way a game sort of made them relate to, their own lives. It's been a very wild ride. 4 years since we first started, and it doesn't look like we're stopping. Which,
Oh wow, that is
you know,
less time than I thought. For some reason, I thought it was like a long running institution.
I
Uh,
have been personally writing for 11 years, but
okay, yeah,
the video game stuff I started in 2019, after doing like the barest minimum freelancing for a very very tiny website. Um, which, I mean, my website's tiny too. I
sure.
don't know why I'm comparing, but uh, basically just, uh, it, it- 2018 to 2019 was me just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. 2019 is when I started, and then just been doing it ever since.
Wow, that is because I was like, no, in my mind for whatever reason. I guess I've also been doing this for a long time, but
Yeah,
when I started about 4 years ago ish in 2019, I was like, oh, yeah, all these people that I'm looking at and like reaching out to have existed for like 4 to 5 years before me, and not realizing that, oh yeah, uh, they are all not. You're not all, even if you're all like decades long bloggers. I also have, um, my folder of 15-year-old indie games sitting on my
yeah.
computer.
Oh, for sure. Um,
But
I also think, just kind of the perception of time is weird right now. Like,
yes,
we're all time compressed because of the pandemic, and then that's still going on, but nobody wants to acknowledge anymore. And like, just everything else that's happened in both video games and outside of it over the last 4 years makes it feel much longer. It really
yeah.
does.
Listen,
It's excruciating.
for the frauds that they are. Horse ebooks is right about something.
Everything does happen
Yeah.
so much.
What did that thing end up being? Was that like a preview for like an art show or something?
My first instinct just now was to joke that it was actually the result of a Harvard sociology experiment, a la Cole Sprouse, but um, no, I want to say it was just like some guy uh, was just messing around, and things got out of hand. I do not remember the story,
Yeah,
to be honest
I
with you.
feel like there's a lot of stuff there where people just start messing around and things get out of hand and then they just collapse on themselves.
Yeah.
I was reading um, people's experience with baseball, uh,
Oh yeah.
and how that very much was those things that kind of like took off and then got out of control and then collapsed under its own weight. Uh, of
Baseball was incredibly fascinating. Like, just to watch from the outside. I never really like got into in depth with it, but it was always just so weird. The way, like, its social media was set up, the way the website itself was set up, kind of how you played the game, what the rules were. It was a deeply fascinating game that I completely understand why certain people like became obsessed with it.
yeah, I was always just vaguely aware of it. Well, my usual my standard operating procedure is to approach everything 5 years too late. Uh,
That's, that works. There is a speaking of, there is a a game slash narrative adventure experience that exists right now that is in its second sort of quote unquote season. That is basically just rerunning the initial game, but with some extra stuff called
Yeah.
Neurocracy.
Yes.
Neurocracy 2.049 is really cool. It's a wiki project set in 2049 where you have to uncover a mystery over the course of real time, essentially. And the way that it works now is you can kind of interact with other players through this app that you can purchase on itch, and you know, you can kind of create your own little like conspiracy board of what's going on. And I think it's really neat. But I have consistently come to it late.
Yeah.
Like, even now, as they're actively in it, I'm like, I should start that. I should like start playing it. And they're like, we're on part 9 of season 2. It's like, yeah, cool. But I bought it, so
Yeah.
I'll come back to it at some point.
That is, I am always like, uh, it's sort of in the opposite direction. I'm like, well, if this is actually cool, it'll be cool 5 years from now, not
Exactly.
not while everyone is like, there is people kind of I was talking in the pre-show where no one could hear us about doing like an AV Club undercover night, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
those bands that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember these bands, of like very much of a certain era that is. I'm sure some of them persevere and are like interested in listening to you now. So I'm like, oh, this is very of this 2015 era of indie pop or whatever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The AV Club Undercover series is definitely one of those things that like I think everybody should go back and watch.
Yeah,
um I'm really glad they still have a lot of their archive on YouTube, but like it is so fascinating to see the what bands were considered like the bands
yeah, yeah.
in 2012, 2013, 2014 that are not here anymore. Like maybe they still exist, they're touring, they're playing music, they're putting out albums, but like they are not at that level now. And to just see what was part of the zeitgeist at the time
All right,
and
let's
what
let's talk about
has
Joyce
been left
Manor.
behind. Do we have to?
Sorry, would you rather talk about Father John Misty?
Well, I mean, we do have the They Might Be Giants cover of
Oh,
Chumbawamba's
that
Tub
is
Thumping.
that's my outro. That is my 100% because that it rules. It rules so
It
hard that
does rule.
they made it like an album cut because it was so good.
It rocks.
Yeah, it is like a perfect interpretation of that song. I'm very close to like just taking a deep dive into Chumbawamba in general.
Oh, don't. Here's my thing. This is
Yeah.
one of my special interests. Chumbawamba, you can ask the people on my Discord, you can ask people I have inflicted this on social media. I will literally post for hours about Chumbawamba's history and the whole nonsense that they got up to from the 80s into the 2010s. Like they were a very prolific band.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. If I start, I'm not going to be able to stop. So you need to stop me.
Okay, I will stop you, but I
Okay.
I I I know that they struck me like when you actually learned about them outside of like, oh, this is fun sing along song. They're like a weird giant anarcho punk band or whatever with like
They're
80
incredible.
members.
It is one of the best. It is one of the music collectives of all time. I will just put it there, and I'll leave it
Yeah.
and resist my worst impulse.
They exist within the same headspace to me. Once I learned about them, like, oh, they're like a different version of like current '93
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um,
in that same kind of like fringe space with like a lot of weird collaboration, a lot of members, a billion albums.
I told you a little bit about on during the pre-show about
Yeah,
a band called Fall of Ephrata, the Watership Down band.
yeah,
But turns like what I learned recently and what I've been obsessed with for the last like 3 to 4 months is the singer of Fall of Ephrata does this with all of his bands. He's been in, I think, 6 or 7 other bands, and every single one of these other bands has some kind of narrative connection to previous bands or other works. Like, I have a whole playlist on my Apple Music called "The Narrative Crust of Alex Bradshaw," and it's just it's 14 hours of music across like the heavy music spectrum from crust punk to metal. Um, that is just this dude making stories with heavy music, which is like not what you would consider from. I mean, the genre is fairly like those genres are fairly narrative based, but
Yeah.
like you don't consider it to be like this grand project where three bands each have three albums come out that each have narrative connections with the other bands. It's wild to listen to, and none of
Yeah.
it sounds the same, but it's all very good.
And you sometimes don't think of like, members of a band like bringing their voice across different like
Right.
other bands. Like, a lot of times that, members like the members of a band get lost within like what they're it's like, I didn't realize this person was in this and this band, or
Yeah,
like
exactly.
what formational bands I was listening to. What was the other night I had another how did I get there? I can't remember how I got there, but I was listening to a lot of Roadrunner. I was listening to the song
Uh-huh.
Roadrunner a lot recently, and like that Modern Lovers lineup is like a lot of like cool stuff, like there's Talking Heads and like Cars band members, and then and Jonathan Richman obviously,
Right.
but like I think I was thinking of just Massachusetts bands in general. Oh, because anyway. I found my narrative thread in my head. It was Mission of Burma,
Okay.
but because I was talking about it last week, because someone's favorite rock was Micah. Uh, and anyway, that's besides the point. We'll learn what that means later on this show, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm excited to find out.
Spoiler: I'm playing the song Micah
Okay,
during one
nice.
of the breaks. Um, but yeah. This is you're also talking to listen to the show. I very much want this show to be. I pitch it as it's a hangout. It's not
Yeah.
about video games necessarily.
Well,
Do you play video games? What are video games, huh? Those are
what are video games?
yeah.
We're just coming out with the philosophical
Yeah.
questions.
Well, do you play any video games? What video should I have a what do you play in video games? Should I turn this into a video game podcast or go, hey, what have you been playing lately?
uh,
What's the last video game you booted up, whether you actually got around to playing it or not?
what's the last video game I booted up? Uh, well, see this. I have been playing a bunch of games recently.
I don't care. I only want the
But
most recent one.
the most recent one was Chance of Sinar.
Okay.
Um, it's a puzzle game. It takes place in this tower that's sort of like the Tower of Babel.
Okay.
And it is a really interesting language puzzle game where you have to learn the language of the society that lives on that particular level of the tower that you're on. And then you have to basically solve puzzles with that language as you're learning it. So you start off not knowing a thing, you learn a couple words that increases your understanding and it helps you translate some of the stuff that people are saying to you. That in turn gives you a sense of where you are and how to navigate the world. And then by the end of the level, you're out here just like having full conversations with people. It's very much not what language learning is like,
Yeah.
but it is very much like this is how you would do it if you were running late or in an emergency and you just had a couple of things in like a language translation guide or something like that. Like, here, I just need to get from point A to point B. Tell me how
Right.
to do that.
Right.
And it's fascinating.
It's a video game. It's that abstraction of language. I know.
Yeah.
So who else was talking about this? Oh, I'm blanking, but someone else was like, I 100% need to tell you about this game on the show because I was like, yes, that game. But then like I don't play video games that came out in the recent year. This came out in
It's a good one.
September. You know, I
It
no,
is
I
a good one.
yes.
And I
Uh,
think it will. I think it will last your rubric of it will still be good in 5 years.
yes, and I'm actually
Um,
getting closer to playing video games of the current era more soon because I have a long uh I buy stuff and then I can't put it away until I watch it or read it. And I had watched a lot of movies and then I just read a lot of comics, but the pile is tiny within like a
mhm.
day's worth, and then I'll be done. And then I was like, oh, look, I can play video games now during the week because I give myself what's it called a besides taking the weekends off, the last 2 hours before I go to bed, I just stop working and like we'll watch a movie or something, or
Mhm.
in this case, play a game. And I'm seeing like, oh, I can, and so I'm trying to also like, oh, what game should I play? Should I load up Game Pass, and see what they've got hidden
Oh
away on
boy.
there? Uh,
Well, you better do it quick because the video game industry is collapsing. So,
yes, of course. The entertainment industry's video games are over. I think.
uh,
Weird.
no, I say that in
Yeah,
jest,
yeah,
mostly because we've recently had just a crap ton of layoffs, and it feels like everything is kind of ending. Like, um,
yeah.
you know, this week especially has been rough. We had the layoffs at Epic Games, which also featured the divestiture of Bandcamp.
Yes, that's the thing I'm worried about.
And
Which is not to say that I'm not worried about people losing their jobs, but it's kind of we were talking in the pre-show. It's all very detached from me.
yeah,
Whereas like it is like, oh yes, it's people like the layoffs to Epic are as close to me as the layoffs at Kellogg's.
yeah, and
It's like
and
it's like nobody should be losing their jobs. Everyone should have jobs and money.
that's exactly right. That is 100% the case. And it's like, what sucks about it is that everyone right now, there's this sort of vibe of this is the best year for games in the last 5 years.
Right.
And it's because, big games have come out. We've had Baldur's Gate 3, we've had Armored Core 6, we've had uh, Tears of the Kingdom, all sorts of like tentpole blockbuster.
It's it's very funny to hear Armored Core 6 is a tentpole.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, nobody expected it to be
yeah.
both as big and as good as it was, I
It
think.
and I'm curious to get now as someone who is playing through the FromSoft back catalog.
Yeah.
I'm very curious if Demons. So I guess more importantly, if Dark Souls hadn't hit, would Armored Core 6 be the FromSoft standard mixed reviews 7 out of 10 and is like this kind of cultural zeitgeist carrying Armored Core 6 beyond its traditional station? I say
I
this as
don't
someone
know.
who loves Armored Core.
Well, I mean, Armored Core slaps is
Yeah,
what I found. Like that's the big takeaway that I've gotten from playing it is to it doesn't really matter what the rest of the discourse is.
yeah.
Armored Core, it rules.
Yes, yes. It's
Uh,
it's ruled from the beginning. There is 10-year-old me very confused by Armored Core who is like, I like building these robots, but I keep losing and I'm in debt and I'm broke. But it's fun.
right.
It's fun. I like building robots. Why are my robots too heavy? What does that mean?
I liken Armored Core to Ace Combat. In not they have very different mechanics,
Yeah.
right? Like Ace Combat is very much like, hey, we just want you to like experience the joys of flying as though you were a child, like
Like what if we
playing with
what
an
if we what if we
airplane.
cranked up oh no. Oh no. I'm doing the thing where I know video games, but I'm blanking on the name of that game. You know the game where you're like a little guy and you're in the back and you shoot dragons. That Sega game.
Yeah, the Panzer Dragoon.
Nope, the other one where you're
Oh,
you're not a
jeez.
little guy on a dragon. You're a little guy flying around. You know the one
Oh,
that I
listen.
played a lot during Yakuza. It's not like the Yakuza games.
I
Um,
have utterly no idea.
I
Um,
the thing is in my brain the invasive game title in my brain is Lode Runner. It is 100% not Lode Runner. It could not be further from Lode Runner. I think it's because I'm thinking of 3D World Runner, which has a similar kind of backdrop. It's the title theme is sick. This is the one situation where I wish I had like a more active chat, because they would be like, "Of course, it's this game." And this is a thing where I'm really bad with games, or really bad with names.
No,
Often,
that's fair. That is a fair deal.
where I could describe you everything. I could tell you all about this game and like all its levels, and like there's that part where the rocks come up, but I'm like just 100% blanking on what the actual name of it is, and I'm buying time. I'm like, oh, hang on, it's before hang on, or is it around hang on? Anyway,
It's not Dragon.
no, no,
It's not. It's not Drakengard.
no, it is not. I've been thinking about playing Drakengard too. I think the next thing I'm doing is I want to
Going
go
through
through
the-
Human Entertainment.
Uh
Uh, how familiar with Human Entertainment, the long running? I think they're defunct now. They're
I'm not very familiar at all. Like, what people don't. One thing people don't know about me is that I started playing video games again after taking a almost 15-20 year break
Yeah.
in 2017.
Oh yes,
So, I what I know about video games is dwarfed by what I have no idea about.
right, right. That is, it's a. But the thing is, you can kind of start whenever you want.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really. Oh, I'm so close. I'm looking at a picture of the little guy, so I know this article has it. No, it
We're
doesn't.
getting
I can't believe
closer.
this article does not have it, even though I'm so pissed off myself that I cannot think of the name of it. I mean, this segment is going along because I am just blanking on
We
the name of this game.
we're inflicting this on the other guests.
It's not. It's not. See, it's not Fantasy Zone. It's not Space Harrier. Space Harrier. Space
Sure.
Harrier. That's what it was. Yes, I saw the little Astro City cab that said Harrier. I'm like, it's Space Harrier. Space Harrier's sick. Listen to the Space Harrier theme. I can't remember
Oh,
why I was
okay.
thinking of Space Harrier.
We were talking about Armored
Ace
Core.
Combat.
Ace Combat, yeah.
Yes, because
There
Ace
we go.
Combat is like Space Harrier cranked up to 1 billion. Because
Yeah.
is Ace Combat like Afterburner?
I mean, in kind of a little bit, in the sense of like it's very arcadey.
Yeah.
Like it's a very mission based, which this is sort of what drew me to the comparison with also Armored Core. Was it's very arcadey. Everything is mission based. It is very much a situation of you choose the best aircraft for the mission at hand. You don't
Yeah.
just like fly around in the single like everything gets destroyed by this all at all times plane. And what I noticed was at IGN, both games got basically the same score, Armored Core 6 and Ace Combat 7, which came out like 2019, and had this exact same complaints about it. Like the story was quote unquote confusing, and it was everything was too like pushed away into like radio broadcasts and briefings, and it's like, yeah, this is how these games are. Like
Yeah.
you're too busy doing cool shit to like to worry about like having it have this intricate and deep story. It's like it's there, especially if you want to find it, it is there, but like you're blowing stuff up. Focus on that.
Yeah. There's the we're ending, or we're coming to an end here, but there is definitely that weirdness of uh, games writing, or larger games writing and games culture sometimes, where it's like
Mhm.
the tendency to fit all of video games into one box, of
Yeah.
like how people interact with games, and it's incredibly silly.
It is.
I think, and it's partially because people get burned out by the industry so quick that you're getting constant like rollover,
Oh
and
yeah,
that
absolutely.
you're not getting any like there's no elder statesmen that have like these long experiences. There's like people starting with Breath of the Wild is the greatest video game ever made. It's like, no, it isn't. You know it isn't. It's good, but there's like, uh, I wonder I wonder the year when uh, I hope GQ keeps doing their like aggregate poll that they did,
Yeah.
because I want to see the year where it feels like it's within the same galaxy as the Sight and Sound poll. And right now it is not. It is
Yeah, no.
like so much further culturally from how each group of critics views their mediums than it could possibly be.
It's true. And I was talking about how the video game industry was not doing so well right
Yeah.
now. But that's also true of games criticism
Oh, that is.
and
Listen,
games media.
the game production of people making games side, a lot of people are losing their jobs, but I think that part will survive just fine. Even if like the direction becomes less interesting, the games will still be made. But game media, on the other hand, I don't know so much. It seems like
Yeah,
it's
it
in dire straits.
we'll find out in a couple of years if all of the freelancers get replaced by
Robots.
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's gonna be bad.
I hope everyone is an AI groomer or editor or a massager
I
or whatever the
refuse.
word is for that they're gonna use.
No, I'm good. Listen, you're gonna pay me $800 for that if that's the case. Eight
Yeah.
hundred per story.
Yes. So speaking of getting paid $800 per story, nope, nothing that I pay per all of these songs that I play on this show. There's the transition because
We got there.
we're gonna go to one of those because we're gonna go on a break. Kyle, thanks for joining me here today.
It was my pleasure.
I hope you'll stick around for the group segments later on. I went well over my timer, which is good. I want to go over, not never under, which is mostly what the timer is warning me about. Um,
You just have it there to make sure you didn't go over
yeah, or make sure I
or
don't go
under.
or don't go too far over. Uh,
Right. All right.
but
Cool.
we'll be back in like about 2 minutes. BRB. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was My Little Airport with I think the My Little Banana. Just one of these random things that I heard about. I was like, I have too many bands saved up. I'm like, this is cool stuff. And then also they have like 8 albums. But anyway, they have fun titles. I like when bands have fun titles for their songs. Um, Speaking of titles, not necessarily fun. Uh, our next guest here, we're bringing it back to Indiepocalypse as we do with always, I would say, 66.6 repeating percent of the show, typically in this modern era. With What Lies Underneath in issue 32, it's Andrea Blythe. Andrea, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, that's great. And I got to ask you, a kind of a sideways version of the standard Indiepocalypse question. I can retreat to the safety of this question. Did you? Because if I recall correctly, I contacted you about being in Indiepocalypse. Did you know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Indiepocalypse was?
Beforehand, no,
Yeah.
I had not. And then I was looking into it and I was like, oh man, this is a pretty cool setup of a way of I don't know, bringing indie games together and sharing them with people and giving them a little wider reach than before.
Yeah, and you would be, I think, semi-familiar with this format because I had a very strange experience at a local flea market kind of art show sort of thing where one of my guests was like, I know about Indiepocalypse because I published one of our authors inside one of your creators as an author within our press, our small press. You were in, I think, some iteration of and publication of Sword and Kettle, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah, Sword and Kettle. Yeah.
which is
God, that's been a little bit.
yes. I mean, Indiepocalypse itself has been a little bit at this point. It's
Yeah,
been a
they published
year.
some of my poetry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is one of those weird. What's the word I'm looking for? Coincidences, or like, and it's something I wish there was more small press stuff in um, games, because I think if you run in the poetry fields and like fiction
Mhm.
fields, you'll probably be like, oh yeah, I got published in this and that different small press outlets, but there's not so many around these parts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you've kind of created that with Indiepocalypse, create a kind of a small press sharing anthology kind of setup, which I don't think people tend to think of setting that up very quickly with games, because people can set up a poetry journal or a fiction journal pretty easily just by
Yeah,
making an online publication. And the equivalent as games can be a little more difficult.
yeah. I mean, I originally before Ash had made that cool launcher that I use now, it was just a folder full of zip files. Is the origin of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is like you can just like files. You can just give people files, and just hope they can play those files on their computers. But that's what it comes down to. Now, for people who are unfamiliar, what lies underneath?
What lies underneath is a little itsy, pixel-based, interactive narrative adventure game. And it's about a young woman who returns home after her sister's death and digging up memories of the home, and something terrifying lies underneath of the family history. And so it's a little bit of a creepy story and family story, and dealing with kind of the family trauma that gets passed down between people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that is very much like when you were mentioning poetry anthology, I'm thinking like Bitsy. I think is kind of like a perfect analogy to. I guess Twine also works, but there's like when people think of video games, they think of often the video portion of it, and I'm surprised there
Hmm.
aren't more like because people could very easily sideways their poetry anthologies into like making little Bitsy anthologies.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, that bringing that up.
Because
There's
they're
so many interesting Bitsy games out there that do just really interesting tiny narratives, that could be compiled. That would be interesting.
and they are very a lot of them are very structure or spiritually similar to like what poetry is, or some of them are quite
Hmm.
literally poetry in
Oh,
video game form.
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, um,
But it's one of
yeah.
those.
I was drawn
No, go
to
ahead.
Bitsy because of its limitations, and
Yeah,
it's like it's because it's simple in terms of the kinds of games you can make and the kinds of narratives you can tell. It allows for creative freedom within that
yeah,
space.
and the ease of play, and like it's very low cost, like computationally.
Oh
You
yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
to worry about having your high end gaming PC. You can. What I brought my two laptops to an event, and one that was very old, like running like XP old. It could not run any of the games, could not even run the launcher, but it could run the Bitsy games. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just ended up loading up one of those on there, and it is like, uh, and it's an interesting thing, like in the way that it. So I had come across your game as I was invited to judge for a game jam sort of
Mhm.
incubator thing. I don't know how to describe it. Uh, I think it was
Was
just
it?
Greenlight. I think it was called.
Yep.
Uh,
Hmm.
I'm still in a Discord channel. Nothing's ever come of my, I don't know, my mentoring I was supposed to offer or something. um, I don't know what it was, but uh, I am in a special channel within a Discord, but because I came across when I was browsing the selections, I was like, okay, well this one obviously is going to be like I hope I get picked to mentor this game, because this seems like in my mind like, this game's complete. It's like a clear front to back narrative. It's like it felt like the most that was like a complete idea. And then I was like, wait, this isn't one of them. So like that's when I emailed you directly. I was like, hey, um, if they're not going to do anything about it, I'm going to do. But it's very much like the different approach of like game, like the philosophy of like what games are,
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Yeah.
like
yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it was interesting being a part of the Greenlight Jam and kind of watching other people's approach to
Yeah.
developing games and the kinds of games they developed. And I mean, I like the Jam in general because of the way it walked through the process of ideation, prototyping,
Yeah.
development, and polishing. And I thought that was very cool setup and was a good idea for completing it. But I think some people approach the game jam process biting off a little bit bigger than they can chew.
Right.
And and when you're and when you're developing with like Unity or Unreal or some of these other or Godot, it's kind of like the sky's the limit,
Yeah.
which is almost kind of it almost has the opposite effect in terms of creative control. Like I mentioned that I was drawn to Bitsy because of the limitations, and it's like, well, because of those limitations, I know I have a small space, and it prompts me to focus on the narrative and be able to come up with a complete narrative in the time frame that's allotted to me with the jam, especially as someone working alone.
Right, and it gives you like the tools that you need to like it does out of the box a lot of the stuff already that you want to do in some cases. And I think like I think people should approach like different like I think a lot of these like more like focused engines, like Bitsy and RPG Maker and RenPy and all these sorts of like hyper focused engines. I think people should use like even if they're like a regular like Unreal, Unity, Godot like program or whatever. If they want to make an RPG, they should just like load up RPG Maker. It's already there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's working to format. Like,
right.
As a poet, it's like you're working to the form of poetry. In short story, it's a different format. In scripts, it's different. So, like any creative process, like if you understand the format, you can work within the confines of that format in a way that's hopefully comes out with a satisfying narrative and experience.
Yeah, and like even like from a software like instrument standpoint, if you're writing poetry, you're probably not writing in like Final Draft,
Yeah, right.
or like Adobe Photoshop. Like you're like, oh no, I'm gonna fire up a work editor or word editor or like the original word editor, my hand.
Right. It's like so many game writers end up having to work in Excel, and now that we're having this discussion about formats effect on thing, I'm like, well, what would it be like to create a poem in Excel, and how could you use the Excel format to evoke the experience? Like it's all like you can totally twist things around too in unexpected ways, but you got to be willing to play with that format.
Yeah. At what point is there Excel poetry where like you start using formulas?
Yeah, right.
Where like formulas are like part of the form. There is some.
That's such an interesting idea.
Yeah. There is, right. And then like because you can like a thing you can't do traditionally with poetry is like you can read like you can open up the sheet and like look at the bones of like like what things are VLOOKUPs are like essential to what the poetry is. And it's like, yeah, no, I like unsurprisingly, I like kind of avant explorations of mediums,
Hmm.
and
For
that is,
sure.
and that is something you can definitely do with like poetry and just fiction and all sorts of different writing, and is all part of um like. So what drew you to making games? Like what was your game? Because I imagine you come from more of not game background. Your other game is you've got two games up. Uh,
Hmm.
well, what is like? Hey, I want to try making some games.
I've been a gamer since I was a kid, but I like hit college and was getting into writing,
Yeah,
and so kind of it became all poetry, all fiction, all book reading, and so there was like this gap in the game,
yeah,
playing games kind of thing. And then I kind of came back to it a while back, and I would say about like 5 years ago when I went, wait a minute, you can write for games. Like you can actually write. People need to write the texts that go into games.
right.
That's something I could do in addition to it. So I kind of started to like pursue that as like something I could do creatively. And part of that pursuit is like exploring and making games yourself, and kick that off with the Twine game, which it's successful to an extent, but I don't know if it's like my best show. But really, I got interested in the way like um, because games have a visual element and an interesting interactive element, like what does that mean for the sake of telling a story? I'm
Yeah,
always fascinated with the ways in which stories can be told and expressed. And so I was looking for ways to tell different stories in a way that like I could approach on my own, which looking at all the different engines eventually led me to Bitsy, and you know wanted to see what kind of story I could tell. And I spent like multiple hours just playing like as many Bitsy games as I could play to just see like what do people do with these things? What kinds of stories are they telling? What are some of the surprises that they can slip in with this format, and finding inspiration in that, and then messing around with the tool myself, just making the most basic a prototype just to be like, okay, this is how this works and how
yeah,
that interacts. And based on that, my original idea maybe probably isn't going to be able to pull off in a Bitsy game. So let's like pull it back. And that kind of brought the story to be a little more intimate than I think I originally thought I was going for. But
no, but
yeah,
it works within the it's one of those things where it's like you can write your giant orchestral score, and then you look around your room and all you have is an old acoustic guitar, and you're like, well, I guess I will have to make do.
right.
And I think that's part of the like you said, the problem of like the openness of platforms is that you're handing people who have a vague awareness of music an entire orchestra pit, and they're like, ah, well, I'm just gonna toot on all these little instruments here, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you don't know how any of them work, and you don't know how they're gonna get together. But it's like the benefit of just like paring things down to a singular focus and idea uh, goes a long way to actually finishing something and like making something that is closer to an idea that you have rather than kind of having this sort of partially working thing that kind of gestures towards being a video game.
Hmm.
Um, and I think small tools, like you mentioned, I mean, Twine's been around for quite a while.
Hmm.
And that was one of the original, like, we're going to look at art games kind of engine sort of thing that I think people gravitated towards when they're talking about, like, these aren't your normal video games. You know, discounting that text adventures are some of the earliest in the forum and all that. But Twine is not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was aware of Twine
Yeah,
ages ago, probably when it first came out, and there was a bunch of people in my
yeah.
poetry and fiction community that were playing around with it,
Back in the
and I'm
Howling
like,
Dogs
man,
days.
I know. I'm like, I could have been messing around with Twine
Yeah,
back in the day. Um, it's interesting though, like if speaking of Twine and like Inkle is the other one that are
yeah,
these kind of branching narrative tools, and how like the way I feel about Twine interacting with it is so different than the way I feel about interacting with Inkle. Like Inkle is very much draws you back to a single point much more, whereas Twine you can just branch yourself into oblivion if you really want
yeah,
to.
yeah.
It's just a different feel to it entirely.
And there's definitely like it's good to have like that openness sometimes where you're like, I want to do. Have you spent a lot of time with Inform 7? I think is what it's called.
No,
Which is
but
like
now I need to learn
it's
about
more of a
it.
text parser one, I think.
Oh,
It's for like text
interesting.
parser style IF.
I will have to check that out.
Yeah, it's
There,
like I mean that is a whole other thing to get into, but like text parsing is like its own kind of like once you can accept like a style of um, language from the player, you know, it is then this whole other thing, you know.
yeah, yeah. I'm not as familiar with text parsing, but like you just now opened another rabbit hole for me to go
Right.
jumping down and explore.
Yeah, that's I love. I mean, part of like I like doing this is like, um, you know, for someone who touts themselves as alternative anthology all the time, or increasingly more recently, I think the space is wide, and also letting a couple more. This is about someone else, not about your situation, but I was talking to someone else who she had made a like a cool puzzle game, but like within the more traditional game space. And then I encountered her later, someone who's coincidentally local, and she was working on a game that was more like abstract and more like art focused because she had been on the show and talked to another guest who had worked in that more abstract space, and it was like got inspired like, oh, what if I also tried something that is like outside of the traditional mold of like what games are. And I think part of the helpfulness of like anthologies is just kind of getting people in that same awareness space, you know.
Yeah, it's so cool to see what other people are doing, and then you go, "Oh my gosh, that's something you can do
Right.
with this medium, with this form, with this tool, whatever it is." It's just so cool to see that openness
Yeah, because
happen, you know?
I imagine it's the same within like you know, I imagine most small press pubs you at least get your one comped copy, so it's like worst case, you know, if nobody buys whatever book you got published in, you have all of your fans among the other comped copies, you know, ideally.
Totally.
Of
Yeah.
like, hey, I got into this and I got into this fiction anthology, which is like I got paid, but also hey, I got a free book of cool stories.
Yeah, and then you get to like read the book and see who else is in there, and you're like, God damn, they're just so good at doing what they
Right.
do, and like it's inspiring for sure.
And you're like, oh, I didn't even think about the theme in like this way that this person did,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's like that is the kind of like the zeitgeist will always have its kind of ebbs and flows of like ideas, but I think you tend to get more influenced just by um, other what other creators are doing around you
Hmm.
and like what the space is like, um, and that is
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because like people will talk about like, oh man, I'm jealous of this author because they got like bestseller lists. It's
yeah,
like the authors I'm jealous of are not so much like the bestsellers, because I mean that's a crapshoot. Who
yeah,
knows if you're
right,
gonna
right.
be a bestseller or not? But like the people I get jealous of are the people who do shit in their poetry or their fiction that just kind of blow my mind, and I'm like, damn, if I had only thought of that, or like that I didn't even know that was possible. Like that, those are the people who I'm like, Oh, I wish I was as good as you, man. Like it's so
Yeah,
good.
and like the unfortunate part about a lot of those people is that a lot of times they're like they a lot of times they persevere, but they don't reach their like that cultural relevance until like 10 years from now or whatever, you know. Like
Yeah.
once the other stuff is kind of like the falls to the wayside, like the New York Times bestseller is now filling up Goodwill shelves,
Right.
and then it's like people, because you know people like yourself, they deeply connect with this work, and that's what like it keeps these things going. That what like that a lot of the art we know that persevered is not was not the best selling of that year. It might have even like been a bomb of it might have been like financial failures, but they resonate with people, and that's what allows them to like to stick around for a long time.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
but speaking of things that are sticking around for a long time, I got two in my head about Space Harrier last time, and I forgot to ask Hal these questions, but they will get them later. They cannot escape these questions. But Andrew, I have two long-standing Indiepocalypse radio questions I need to ask you.
Okay.
First up, what is your favorite type of rock?
Ooh, my favorite type of rock. I was very much kind of an alternative rock girl growing up in that era with like, Nirvana and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But definitely my favorites are some of the female performers of that era. Oh my God, Tori Amos and, Bjork and some of the women who were doing fun and weird stuff with their music.
It's perfect. And I, weirdly enough, before this mentioned AV undercover I was watching, I was just listening to Courtney Barnett's version of Cannonball for that segment there,
Oh, awesome.
which is a confluence of future and past alternative works. Future, I guess, current, not future. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
And this follow up question:
Yes.
do you have a favorite Toho character?
Uh, a what character?
Toho.
Ho ho.
Yes.
I don't. I clearly. I'm at a loss, so I'm
So
not really.
that's Andrea. That's why it's a do, not a what. Don't worry, we will. We'll get. You can learn about Toho later in 6 months from now when I do my Indiepocalypse pledge drive, in which I'm hard committing over these last few weeks to just brush to like building up a syllabus for a Toho 101 class. Um,
I will do my homework.
it's a long running Bullet Hill Dojin series game series.
Okay.
Anyway, uh, we'll be back. Andrew, thanks for being here.
Thank
Uh,
you so much.
we'll be back in like about 2 minutes and 41 seconds. Bye for now. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was "The Desire of Huckleberries" by Natalia Baylis. My break thing. I've decided I'm not going to go this weekend, but I'm really thinking like I should go to the theater at some point by myself, clearly to an empty theater to go see that re-release of Stop Making Sense. And I thought maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I think I don't know. I really do want to go. It's a cool. If you're out there and you have the chance and you have the opportunity and you're worried about people being in the theater, don't worry. Based on the seating chart I was looking at last year, you'll have the entire theater to yourself uh, to go see that film. But that all aside, we are here with our next guest, who you may know from issue number 30. Oh, I was right. It was 37 of Indiepocalypse Radio with Girlfriend Simulator. It's Ebby. Ebby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Welcome to the show. I'm going to do this. I want to refresh in case we have questions. We do not. So first off, finally, I'm glad I returned to the safety of the Indiepocalypse question. How did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Um, I'm not sure actually. I think I heard about it in Dev Talk. So I'm in a Discord server where like visual novel devs like kind of all hang out and talk about things. And I think one of the developers in the server said that they'd submitted one of their like a free jam visual novel they did to Indiepocalypse, and
Yeah.
they were like, oh, it's like a really fun thing to do. You get to like see other like indie games, and you get like a bit more exposure. And I'd not heard of it before, so I looked into it, and then I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool. Or maybe I'll submit one of my VNs in there as well. So that's how I found out about it.
If I'm gonna hazard a guess, it might be a collaborator of yours. It might be Masanasi, perhaps.
No, I
No.
don't think it was her. I think this was before I'd ever even
Oh,
worked with her. I don't
okay.
remember who it was. It was someone else. I feel like there's quite a few like VNs
Yeah.
which are in Indiepocalypse.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, there are actually quite a few. Um, I mean, I've been now that's been going for 44 months, 45 months with no repeats. I guess it's touched a lot of the indie space.
And there really are a lot of indie VNs out there, so
Yeah.
I guess it's like there's a lot for people to potentially submit.
Yeah, that is like I feel like that is indie VNs feel like this whole corner of like when you talk about like spaces that feel detached from the video game industry. Visual novels is like another like thriving scene that is like
I
so.
have seen lots of VN fans even debate whether VNs are games at all. Like even people who love VNs who play them all the time, some of these people will be like, I don't think they're games. Like
Yeah,
they're a whole separate thing.
they feel so like well, I guess the video game industry pays attention to visual novels when they make a KFC dating game or whatever.
And they make
But
a silly meme one, yeah.
yeah, but then otherwise it is like a thing that feels like off to the side, even though there are these things where people are like the passion exists where they're getting translated into like more languages than some AAA games, you know.
Yeah, that is true. You do see some VNs, like even small indie ones, which are in like loads of different languages.
Yeah, because people are just like, oh yeah, I love these things. I'm very people are extremely passionate. Like the rare times when I get like a lot of questions submitted to um, this show, like 99% of the times is because of a visual novel developer on the show.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It is like it's a passionate fan base, um, and like a whole. I think I probably get caught up in this conversation every time I have a VN dev on there because they're cool. They're like they're very. But speaking of VNs, let's talk the one that you had within Indiepocalypse. If people aren't familiar, what is Girlfriend Simulator?
So Girlfriend Simulator is like a relatively short, I think it's about 15,000 words. I don't remember off the top of my head. But okay, so it's a relatively short horror visual novel, which I made for the Spooktober game jam last year. So Spooktober is like a jam where I think it's mostly for visual novels. Um, it's like a jam for horror themed visual novels or visual novels which are set during Halloween or things that have like monsters or ghosts,
Yeah,
etc. And then I had the idea to make Girlfriend Simulator, which is a short horror VN where it's set in Japan, like a lot of visual novels are set in Japan, and the main character is this fairly average Japanese university student, and he has a cute girlfriend who dotes on him while he's feeling sick, and it's kind of set up like a kind of typical romance visual novel where it's like, oh, you're just being looked after by a cute girl, but then it's apparent as you like read through it that something's like not right about this girl. The main character doesn't even remember who she is. And you have a few choices. Your choices influence your, I think it's your, is it your trust meter? I don't remember
yeah.
my own
I
game.
think I think that's what it's called. There's something to that effect. It's just like your trust
Yeah,
value.
you have a meter which, like, your choices will influence how much you trust her or not. And if you trust her too much, then you get different endings based on how much you trust her, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It plays with these kind of. Is there a name for this? I feel like there exists this almost like subgenre within like a lot of like manga and anime and I imagine visual novels and light novels of a very plain guy who a girl really likes for some reason. Um,
Uh, well, in
yeah,
I guess it depends how many girls are into the guy. If there's a lot of girls who are into one
Right.
guy, that would be like a harem thing. But for visual novels, usually if it's just about cute girls, it's usually called like moe gay, like
Yeah.
moe game, like
Okay.
cute game. But they usually involve multiple different girls, and you could also call it bishoujo gay, which is like beautiful girl
Yeah.
game. I've
Okay.
also seen that term used.
Because I was thinking a lot about this genre. There was when I saw like a trend within series where like all the key art was some kind of girl, but then I learned after the fact that there was like a male protagonist that is not featured anywhere. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
that's really common
Yeah.
for visual novels about cute girls. Like lots of the people who are into these sorts of VNs, they're not interested in the
right.
male character at all. So like in all the promo art, it's just lots of cute girls and that's it. Like it's actually really common in Japanese visual novels where like you will play as like a male character, like the main character's a guy, but he like doesn't have a face or he doesn't have eyes. That's really common.
Because he's
And
there.
they'll draw the artwork so it's like the guy is interacting with the girl, but the characters are positioned in such a way that you can't see the guy's face, and it's
Yeah.
like just the girl.
Well, because the guy is me. All these girls like me.
Usually, the male protagonist doesn't have a voice as
Yeah.
well, but all the girls do, so it's just easier to self-insert and pretend that you are the guy.
And then I can get IRL married to my Hatsune Miku.
There was a guy who did that
I know.
in Japan who got married to the what was it? It was like she was like on like a screen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
she was
was.
like a projection or something.
I thought about that recently because one of those cases, the software, the live service that was his wife went down.
Yeah, it got discontinued. He got married to her, and they were together for
Yeah.
like 10 years, and then yeah, the software is no longer being supported. So I guess she's gone now into the void.
Now, does that mean is he a widow or is he like abandonware? What is the word for
I
that?
actually I read an article about this exact thing, and I think the guy said that oh well, even if like this software doesn't exist, like we are still married, like in my heart we're still together.
That it's such a very strange end game of like this cursed tech. Of
Well, he seemed happy,
Yeah.
I guess.
yeah, it is like that's the thing is like humans we can just kind of do whatever we want, you know. We kind of made up all these rules that we have. We marriage is a thing that we just kind of made up, you know.
And if you want to get married to Hatsune Miku, why not?
Yeah.
If it makes you happy.
Right. It's like it's for the intense importance we placed on it. It's not a thing that most animals kind of do.
I bet there's a visual novel about getting married to Hatsune Miku. There's probably like numerous visual novels about this.
There's probably a burgeoning subculture, a subgenre of it.
Actually, I did see one like English visual novel ages ago. This was released back in like 2005 or something, which was called Marry Me Misato, which was all about being married to Misato from Evangelion.
Yeah, there's to show my age for a moment here, perhaps that was like maybe 2005. My God. Okay, so never mind. You're in here. You're in this pit with me.
I mean, I didn't see that in 2005.
Sure.
I found it like a bit later.
No, but that was a lot of like old Newgrounds stuff was like dating sims too, whereas like clearly like of this era of I am just clearly taking screen caps from anime and placing them over like clip art background, and you are dating Evangelion or like whatever Escaflowne. Well, I'm trying to think of what were anime of that era, but you know.
I actually never went on Newsgrounds, so didn't that host a lot of Flash games?
Yeah. There were a lot of there were a lot of late night Flash game playing, and like I distinctly recall have like memories of like just like us like friends like no like very stubbornly like, well, no, we're gonna win this dating sim game at like
I'm going to
midnight.
win. I'm going to win this girl's heart. I will make her like me.
Yeah, because a lot of them were from the that the I forget what the subgenre is called, but the stat based like the RPG
A
dating sim style.
dating sim.
Yeah, like
Oh, I was actually looking around the other day because I was thinking it would be fun to like make a dating sim myself, which has like stats and like money and stuff. And I found someone who made like a framework in Ren'Py which you can use for your own projects. And it was like inspired by all of your favorite Newsgrounds dating sims, which no longer exist.
yes,
Like that's how they marketed it.
yeah, that is like a whole other like era of games as well. Even that is like, and I mean, it's weird to think about now, but that was indie games, at a time. That predates kind of like what you see now in itch is like that Newgrounds space of people like, in a lot of cases like, hey, this is like kids on their computer just like hammering away at games.
There's lots of interesting stuff on it. Lots of very varied things on it, just like varying like degrees of quality.
Yes, yeah, that is, and like approaches and styles and like,
I
part
mean,
of.
I yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I mostly read visual novels, but I do like poke around on the visual novel tag on itch out of interest sometimes. There's lots of different stuff on there. You get like stuff made by like teenagers in their bedrooms, and then you have stuff which is made by like bigger companies or like people who actually have like budgets and stuff. There's a lot of variation.
Yeah, I've because the word indie means so nothing. I've gravitated to the term of referring to people as like budgeted developers. Like there's like, do you have a budget or no budget devs? Because I feel like that makes such a huge difference of like, I have literally the money to pay someone to make this part of the game for me or with me, or I guess in worst case it is this for me. Uh, but speaking of that sort of thing, you have, and I think you see this a lot in the visual novel space too, of like people like because people are coming to tell stories, but they come from a lot of like varied skill sets. So you get like a lot of like collaboration in the VN space, and like
Yeah,
I imagine VN Dev is part of how that stuff happens. But like, how do you come across like, uh, you know, hey, I want to collaborate. I want to write this game. I want to do art on this game. Is a lot of it comes through game jams or like Discord channels?
I think that Dev Talk is a pretty big place. It's a pretty big server. There's like several thousand people who are part of it. There's lots of writers and composers and artists in there, and there's like channels where people can post and say, "Hi, like this is my skill set. I want to work on a visual novel. Does anyone want to work on this project with me?" And there are different channels based on whether it's like just like a project which will be released for free or a commercial project, and if people are expecting payment.
Yeah, it's almost like a weird. It's almost like a giant Dojin circle almost. uh,
Yeah, it is.
it
I
it
found a lot of the people I work with, like just posting on Twitter, like I'm working on this, like I'm looking for people to fill these positions, like email or DM me if you're interested.
yeah, and that is like because the hobbyist space, like, well, we don't have a good word for it in English. I think partially, because or I guess or more that like hustle culture makes hobbyist sound derogatory. Um,
Yeah.
when really hobbyist, I think is probably the best word for that kind of. Hey, I would love to make money off of this thing also, but I'm not like a business and not like doing this just to make money.
Yeah, I mean if you want to make money, like visual novel dev is not
No,
necessarily the most lucrative thing.
no. Even if you are doing good, I just you saw recently as part of the Epic thing that
Oh
they had
yeah, I saw
that
that.
a boyfriend dev hasn't been paid in like 2 years.
Oh, I saw that as well. I was like, how is this a thing? Like, Haskell Boyfriend was like such a big thing. It was so popular. Like one of the more popular visual novels, which people who aren't even into visual novels have heard of. It's
Yeah.
like kind of wild how they could just have not been paid for 2 years.
Yeah, and I don't like it's such like an English language like touchstone for like game development stuff in the like
Yeah.
visual novel space. And it's such a I mean maybe even if some people are maybe didn't actually play it and kind of abstracted the idea of it as a goofy parody visual novel.
I have read some of Hatful Boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like I remember ages ago, back in the day when it was like a big thing on Tumblr and people talked about it there. But I got like a really early bad ending. Like I think I got killed in like 5 minutes, and then that was my one playthrough, and I never played through it again. So that was
Yeah.
my whole experience with it.
Yeah, it's very much like not. It's one of those weird things where it is like, I think the same thing with like the film Amelie, you know, where you would think of it as like, oh, this is just a quirky girl doing things, kind of genre, and the same way you think of Hatoful Boyfriend. It's like, oh, this is a funny you're dating things you're not supposed to date genre, but it's like, no, that dev just likes pigeons.
I thought there's a bit of a genre shift in Hatful Boyfriend, and it becomes like a legit serious story. And I've
Yeah.
seen lots of people say they thought it was quite emotionally impactful, but I mean, I never got to those parts, so I can't comment on that.
Right, right. But what gets abstracted is the I'm gonna date.
Lol, you can date pigeons.
Right, I can date things off the McDonald's dollar menu now.
And then it just became a whole genre of just people making parody visual novels where you can date Colonel Sanders and
Yeah,
I don't know, all sorts of strange things.
yeah. It's just this weird like we need a joke for April Fools. We're a AAA company. We need an April Fools joke. Let's pretend we made a visual novel, which is a very it's very weird. It's such as kind of
It's like literally the whole genre is kind of viewed as just a joke.
yeah. This kind of like and some of that is I wonder how much of some of that is like this kind of distancing of like oh it's one of those Japanese genres where
Yeah, I mean it could be. I mean lots of the more popular Japanese visual novels are just there's lots of cute girls and you can date them. I've read quite a few of these visual novels. These like tend to be like the bigger budget ones.
yeah what I wonder how like what is if I go to steam.com what is the most popular visual novel.
Oh, it's probably gonna be some horrible, not horrible. It's probably gonna be some like 3D lewd game made in Dev
Oh
Studio.
right, I forgot that subgenre.
But that's also a big part of visual novels. I shouldn't call them horrible. I'm sure the devs put a lot of work into them. They're just
Yeah,
kind of not my thing.
yeah, someone had submitted one to Indiepocalypse at one point and
Oh no,
I had this
I
thought.
apologize to them.
And I had this thought where I was like, because it was very much like a thing I had to think about the first time, like, do I have this? Like, it feels like Indie Apocalypse has always been like a thing for adults ostensibly, but it never
Hmm.
traditionally never had that much quote unquote like clear, viewable from outside adult content.
Yeah.
But then it ended up being like it was just perfectly fine. And like I was like no I'll put it on the wait list. Like it just didn't. I preferred 9 other games. Nothing against the game in particular. And since then, occasionally when I go through my giant wait list, I like, oh, should I invite them? And they have like a bigger Patreon than I do, so I'm like, they probably don't need to get into Apocalypse.
There's a lot of like really, really successful like 3D lewd visual novels which have like patrons and they make like so much money. Like I've looked through some of them.
Yeah,
It's quite interesting, but that also feels very separate from like the Japanese VNs and then the English like indie VNs you see on itch.io. These like I mean they're all visual novels, but these three things all feel quite different. It feels like they all exist in different spheres and they attract different audiences.
yeah. It's like the thing is, it's almost like games are just like very bad about subgenreing things, It'd be like
Yeah.
if you called visual novels like rock music, but then someone's like, "Oh, I like progressive rock." Someone's like, "I like punk rock." Someone's like, "I like easy listening, kind of like dad rock." And it's like that's all different kinds of VNs, and they're, but it's this whole broad thing that like I think that's part of people just kind of get caught up in thinking that that mentality sometimes that lingers of like all video games for all people, and there is like a singular video game culture when that is like not feasible.
I do think it's interesting that the biggest Reddit for visual novels, the head moderator on there has explicitly stated, I only consider like VNs made in Japan real VNs. I don't want people to talk about any like English made VNs on here because they're not proper VNs.
Right. There's like what is that? That's you get into that that arguments of like what is real roguelikes, what are real
Yeah.
anything, and then, like that is even feels like a more even arbitrary definition of VNs because it's not like what are the Japanese mechanics that are core to this that English developers are not using, and it's probably like
Written in Japanese,
yeah.
that's a pretty core mechanic. Has Japanese artists.
Yeah, which is kind of a whole other thing. But
They allow discussion about other visual novels on the main visual novel subreddit, but like it's leaned very heavily towards the Japanese stuff because that's what most of the people who frequent it are interested in.
right, right. But that's a whole. We could every we could talk about visual novels for a very long time. I'm one of the what I mentioned from the first segment. I was like, I'm going to play modern games. One of the modern games I'm going to play very soon is a visual novel. I'm going to play like how's it pronounced? Is it Ghost Pia? Am I missing a letter in there?
Oh, I think that's how you pronounce it. I saw that on Steam. I was thinking about buying it, but I haven't yet. I have like a backlog on Steam
Yeah.
of like 200 VNs that I haven't read, so I don't know if I should buy more.
No, that's. I mean, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna play it on my Switch because I can get it on my Switch, and I can just like chill and not sit on my computer and watch it on my big TV. But
I literally only bought a Switch because there are some VNs on the Switch which aren't on PC. That's the only reason why I have a Switch.
yeah, I got one partially just so I could like get away from my computer. um, I do have an HDMI cable that like a really long HDMI cable from my computer to my TV that has like a little switcher on it. But I like the and also I can bring it on theoretically if I take trips I can bring my Switch with me easier than I can bring my PC with me.
Yeah, that's true.
So I can play Rhapsody, a musical adventure on the go. But that said, we're getting to the end of this segment, although you won't be gone for very long because we're hitting the group segment after this. But the two important questions, you had a little time to prepare. What's your favorite type of rock?
Okay, so one artist who I've worked with on multiple projects is literally called Rock. That's his name. So I'll say he's my favorite Rock. He's one of the he's a very talented artist. He's a really nice person. I've worked with him for several years. He can be my favorite Rock.
Perfect. That is an interpretation of the question I don't think anyone's approached yet. Like no one said their favorite rock is Rock Hudson or who is the king of fighters? Rock. What's his last name? Rock Howard because he's Geese Howard's son. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I've not played King of Fighters.
I haven't played very much either, but I think it's cool looking.
It's a pretty cool name.
Yeah. But that said, follow-up question. Do you have a favorite Toho character?
I've never actually played a Toho game, but I'm familiar with the series. I did play a fan Toho game, which was like a Pokemon reskin, but with Toho characters.
Oh, that's
like a long time ago.
I mean, that is like the half of Toho. I think is a bullet hell. The other half is the thriving.
The fan community.
Fan
There's
community.
like so much Toho music and Toho fan games, and it's pretty cool that there's like some Toho fan games which are also on Steam, which aren't
Yeah.
made by Zun, but
Yeah, I think
but
that is.
there's people still allowed to like make money on them.
Yeah, that'll be part of my eventual Toho 101 course, perhaps. Is about the, hey, if you just want to make your own games with Toho that are just commercial games, you can just do that within
I
certain
think there's like
guidelines.
one visual novel on Steam which is like just called Sakia Gives You Advice and Dabs, and it's like a $1 at the end,
Yeah.
which is just Sakia from Toho just, I don't know, giving you life advice.
And then does she dab? I think she probably dabs.
I
I believe.
presume that she dabs. I haven't actually played it.
No, I've played Sakuya as her within that Luna Nights. I have played Luna Nights starring her, but not uh not this particular VN. And I think I have also played some of the proper games. But
Maybe my
you're dodging
favorite
my
Toho
question, Abby.
characters. Well, I don't know any of the
Oh, okay.
characters, so it's hard to. But I know their designs. Maybe my favorite design-wise is Flandre, maybe, or Patchouli.
You're in good company here. Those are both denizens of the Scarlet Devil Mansion that I'm a big fan of. But yes, sleepy, sleepy librarian and demon vampire, I think, is what they are.
Yep, there's so many good Flandre figures. I look at Toho figures a lot because there's lots of really nice ones, but then it's like, well, I don't know the characters, so there's probably no point buying any of them. But some of them look pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. That seems a dangerous figure to get with like those little crystal wings. But, nope, I'm not. I'm getting dangerously. I don't have any. I have two figures to my name, and that is a little Hellboy that came with a book that someone got me at one point as a gift, and I have a little 3D printed skeleton jelly. But aside from that, because I have no space to put them, but I have new desks, and I was like, I have a whole other desk that I'm like, can I make models now?
Think of all the Toho figures you could buy. I
I
feel
know.
like there's enough to fill up like multiple rooms. I'm sure there's so many Toho figures.
Yeah, I basically I have a dresser and a table that I got. They're just like old furniture. I'm like, yeah, I'll take those as opposed to my shitty table that was like pieces of wood put together, basically. That I still do use for my shipping supplies, but I now have shelf space. But anyway, we're just beside the point. When I ask those few questions, it usually means I'm supposed to hit the end of the segment. So, Abby, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
We'll be back very soon in like 3 minutes and 35 seconds. But until then, goodbye. Anything else? Welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was my spoiled song from ahead of time. That was Mission of Burn with Micah. And I was right last week. It was on Versus. I of course knew that. Of course, all the Burma Mission of Burma heads out there.
Just so upset at you for getting it wrong.
They were just pissed. They're like, how could you think that Micah even possibly could have been on Signals, Calls, and Marches? And I mean, even that is kind of like, technically it is like, yeah, okay. They're sitting right next to Minutemen. They're sitting right next to Double Nickels on the Dime. Look at that. Anyway, 80s punk music, post-punk music, whatever you want to call it. I like it a lot. We're back with the whole gang. The whole gang's here. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Kyle, you think you got off ahead of? You think you got away, but no. You have to answer these two questions. Now you've had extra time to prepare. Now that my brain isn't thinking about. Now I'm not harried thinking about Space Harrier. What's your favorite type of rock?
My favorite type of rock is obsidian.
Perfect.
You all thought I was gonna answer with music. No, it's obsidian.
I thought you were going to say Rock Howard, the famous pretty boy son of Geese Howard from the King of Fighters series.
That would make me a poser because I've never touched those. So I like proclaiming to love Rock Howard when I have no idea. That would be kind of lame.
Okay, but it's now the follow-up question, something you could also be a poser. Do you have a favorite Toho character?
I've never played a Toho. Like I have not even looked in Toho's direction. I have absorbed some parts of it culturally
Yeah.
in the sense of like I listened to a YouTube metal guitarist who's played a bunch of Toho songs very fast.
Yeah.
But I have no concept or context for anything that's happening in the world of Toho. I understand that it is it's probably one of the longest running game series with like 25 sequels.
Yeah. Those early games were on like, what were they on, like, were they on the
PC
PC 98?
98.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've played them. Yeah, I've had to make sure I have a PC 98 emulator so I could play highly responsive to prayers.
I just it's it is absolutely impenetrable to me. So unfortunately, I don't have a favorite Toho.
That's all right. There's room in your heart eventually for the Sakiyas and the Reimus and the clown girl whose name I can't forget. Yeah, the first Toho, 1996.
It's so long. That's so many video games.
Yeah, it was on the PC 98. Yeah.
Like we're talking about how cool Indiepocalypse is, and you've done a lot of iterations of it, a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Uh, Zune just kind of does that, but with Toho.
Yeah, that is very much like
It's like issues of Toho.
that is like, I look at Zune with his giant beer, his giant. I have one of those. Actually, very recently, I got one of those giant pitchers of beer. Not pitchers, but like those classics. Because there was Oktoberfest, and at the local beer place they had like one of those giant. They're not Steins, because I think Steins have heads, right? The little flip tops.
I think so, yeah.
But the one without it, whatever you call those huge mugs. No, I think it is a Stein. I do have a Stein. I got one of those giant Steins, perhaps.
Yeah.
For beer, and I'm like, I'm one step closer to becoming Zune, which is I maybe detached from the space and just kind of doing my own thing,
Just every once in a while, we'll get a missive from you, just like, here's another Indiepocalypse. It's incomprehensible to everybody, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I love having like, I at my local demo night, I fired up. I thought what it would be like, a more traditional like video game. I was like, okay, let me not put something like something absurd like Gurn Group on here, which is my go-to expert level Indiepocalypse. But I put up Homie Boons. I'm hungry, I'm healthy, I'm human. And I was like, oh, wait, I forgot these things are like dense and impenetrable. Even though it is like, I forgot that I'm a sicko for this kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
Because it's like, if you haven't played, I think they had just put out a patch for it. I say a patch, but like a new iteration of that. But it is I don't know how to describe the space. It feels like an NES game that your friends would tell you about. That is like, it feels like the Drassel family, It feels like, hey, here's this Falcom game that never got released in the U.S. It's dense and it's got a lot going on, and it's like kind of confusing to play, but it rewards you immensely if you give it the time. But anyway, people had a very hard time playing that, and I was like, oh. Then I was like, I'll go to something easier to play. I'll go over to Sylvie Lime. That's like a video game. Also, a lot of people want to give me feedback for these games, and I was like, I did not make them. Also, they're supposed to be like difficult, but like not difficult, It's more
rough around the edges a little bit.
Yeah, but it's more like, how do I describe? It's like if you'd only listened to radio rock music and then somebody put on like Godspeed You Black Emperor, which I think is extremely listenable music.
Mm-hmm.
but like if you're not prepared for like a 20-minute long instrumental, you might go, oh, what is this thing?
Right, and then if you immediately jump to Envy, they're out, they're gone, they've left.
Right. And then you're just like, but if you like, you spend time with it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then you start to understand it. I think most games are like not, I think more people need to play like really bad games, quote unquote, I say.
So what makes a bad game?
I think like in terms of like games, when I say bad game, I'm referring to like not even like really bad games, like friend of the show cast bad game Hall of Fame bad games, you know? Like,
Right.
but I do sincerely love that NES Friday the 13th a lot. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. But it sucks. But stuff like that I think is like, I think, you know, for as much as people love them, I think FromSoft's back catalog for a long time were bad games, you know.
Yeah.
Because there were these slow moving, like confusing, like dense games that just played by the way that they chose to play. And like, to me, play games that are just like unfamiliar, you know, third person action games that don't play like Batman Arkham Asylum. That kind of like broader space. I guess that's what I think of when I say bad games. Or in this context when I say it. But then that's how you prepare yourself for like truly bad games that you actually still then derive pleasure from, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Oh yes, hello, welcome to the friend of the show, Brogan Hackett. Yes, this is a fun little. But that aside, my ranting about video games aside, important question for the group, I guess. What do you guys think of that Mario fellow? What's he up to? What's your opinion on him?
God, he's like immortal, right? Like
Yeah.
he just never dies.
Is Mario an idea?
Nintendo would like to think so.
I was at an event. I was at the same event showing my games as Charles Martinet one weekend, I should say, which I think kind of like gives you the perspective of like what Charles Martinet is like, what his status kind of really is, sort of, in a sad sort of way.
Well, we don't know what brand ambassador means, and I guess neither does he.
I think it means the same thing. I think it means he'll go to video game events in like the Philadelphia outskirts and sign $60 interview or autographs.
Boy, that is kind of bleak.
Which is what he's already been doing. It is the true like. I am a voice of a character and should be living like a king. Or maybe he is living like a king. I can't judge that dude's lifestyle. But
yeah, maybe he just likes going to the outskirts of Philadelphia to sign $60 posters.
Yeah, maybe. There are some people who I know in that area. They're like that place is in, what was it? It was like Thousand Oaks or Oaks Bluff, Oaks something. Like you got to go out there. Like I hate going out to that place. To get into some U.S. regionalism for a moment. I don't know one whit about Pennsylvania. Don't ask me about it. Unfamiliar. Yes, that is the end. The end of video games is Mario jumping on that axe and plunging all of us companies into the pit, and none will remain. It's why Which why I'm sidestepping the term video. I should just get out. I should sidestep. I should make up a new term for them that aren't video games. Interactive artistic experiences.
Interactive artistic experiences. That is very true. That has a ring to it.
You joke, but I've absolutely heard some game studies people call it that. I wanted to die.
I actually prefer the opposite, where I don't think you need to call them cinema or graphic novels. I think you need to call, what Epic produces. You just need to call them software. Fortnite is a piece of software. And games are the art side is called games. I mean, because they have more in common. Fortnite is closer to a version of Excel than a piece of art, perhaps.
I would say Fortnite is the Adobe Creative Suite of video games.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like it's closer to a piece of software than it is to a piece of art.
Like genuinely speaking, if we're looking at for some reason, recently, with I'm in the Deep Hell server and also the Critical server with Natalie, and kind of the whole thing is like every once in a while, like we'll all kind of get fixated on a specific game. And recently in Deep Hell, it's been Fortnite.
Yes, I've seen the little splashes of Fortnite from the Deep Hell zone.
And like, I've never played Fortnite. I recently played my first couple matches with Skeleton and with some other folks, and I was genuinely surprised at how you absolutely don't need to know what's going on at any time. It doesn't matter. Like, you can just jump in and have a terrible time no matter what. And you don't, like, there's no, like, usually with video games, like, there's this need, or you have to have kind of some basic background understanding of like what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you've played literally any shooter, like Team Fortress, Counter-Strike, or Call of Duty, or whatever, you've played Fortnite. It all just maps 1-to-1 over onto Fortnite, and so you can kind of just muddle your way through, and it's so weird. It is such a weird experience.
Yeah, it is. It's such a bizarre kind of like we just made. I mean, it is very much like the game itself is we were just making survival games because those are popular. Then we pivoted into battle royales because those are also popular. It is like video game stew.
I have a genuine theory that Tim Sweeney he's just like desperate to be liked. He's made $1 billion. His engine is the most popular and one of the widely most used in the AAA space. He owns basically everything, and he just wants to be. He's an Elon Musk character.
That is.
He just wants to be liked, and this is going to lead him down the same dark path Elon Musk went down.
Yeah, I see. You say there's like 30 divorces in Tim Sweeney's future.
Well, there's that, and there's also like the hard right turn.
Yes,
that he's already talking to right wing accelerationists. Right. They are in his mentions. He's hanging out with them, and they're like discussing AI. And it's like, oh man,
yeah,
I hate you so much.
Because even if those people also hate them, they recognize the value in utilizing him.
Exactly. It's bleak as hell.
Get ready for your next Fortnite emotes. No.
The OK sign.
Yes.
New nightmare unlocked.
Yeah. 100% agreed.
Anyway.
Oh, God. Anyway.
Video games suck.
Let's talk about anything else other than video games.
Except when they don't. Sometimes video games, that's a lie. Sometimes video games are good. That's what my business card says.
Sometimes video.
No, it says I hate video games. And on the back it says sometimes I don't.
That's fantastic.
And I'm waiting for like that. Like 90% of the things that I make when I don't have an idea, I just like, what if I just steal an idea from music? And I'm waiting for the time when I hand them someone my business card and they go like, "Oh, like the Replacements song," and I go, "Yes, like the Replacements song." I hate music. Anyway,
Yeah.
The Mets, big fan, but that is we're not
Let's
here.
go Mets.
We're not here to talk about the Mets. They just put out a new
Love the
expanded.
Mets, baby.
Speaking of Tim, they just put out a new expanded version of Tim recently. Tim, the album that is. The only Tim for me is the Replacements album called Tim.
Uh-huh.
Left of the Dial, Bastards the Young. What's that one about?
Replacement's a good band.
It is.
It's a Minneapolis band, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
them, Husker Du.
I've played a lot of both them and Husker Du on the show. They have a song called something to Husker. The Replacements, that is. Anyway. Alex Chilton may be the greatest rock and roll song ever made. I don't know. I'm putting my foot down. I think Alex Chilton is probably the best rock and roll song made. It's got all the components you want. Singing about the stuff they like. Alex Chilton. It's got a solo that's cool and doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like 3.5. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, I was just talking more about the song, how it's good.
I was going to say, I do find it funny that Steve Albini, famous rock producer, minimalist rock producer, absolutely hates the Replacements, or at least did in the 80s.
Yeah, it seems like they're
big curmudgeon.
They are one of like the bones of rock and roll music nowadays. In my mind, really I assume they are. But like they're in that same kind of like, if you know, like, oh, I listen to rock music, I listen to anyway. Then you go one step further, and like, what if I start listening to Big Star?
Oh well, see, you can go a lot of different directions with that.
And yeah, there is. Listen, all the part of this is also listen to your influences. Check out your influences. I think is an important thing that artists should do more often. You know. Check out,
absolutely.
And I get like a wide range of like, oh, why did this person do this thing? Why did this person like this? What is it? What does this mean? Who is Alex Chilton? Who are the Box Tops or whatever that other band is called? Four Tops. What is that other? Anyway, Alex Chilton. Whatever. I'm not gonna.
I am literally just making notes right now of different bands and shit to check out.
Yeah, I had someone had the politeness on one of these shows to be like, Andrew, I like listening to the show. It's really fun to not only not know what you're talking about. And I'm like, I'm not even talking about obscure things. Like I was talking, I think I had alluded to the thing that prompted them to say this. I alluded to some, I think it was referring to an experience a friend and I had where, in relating to being out of touch with pop sensibilities, when we were very steadfast in our agreement that Merriweather Post Pavilion is 100% just a pop album, and it isn't. I'll be honest, it isn't. But we're like, yes, no, it is. But I mean, really, it is. It's just a pop album. But he was like, I don't know what that is, and I was like, what? Of course you do. It's one of those things that feels too obvious to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
That
absolutely.
Like I don't want to I would never I'd be afraid to mention that I was listening to in the airplane over the sea when I went to the dump today, because it's so obvious, you know.
I mean, look, I feel like we've all a lot of people who listen to like certain kinds of punk and alternative, they get into this mind space of, you know, I mean, it literally is Boxcar, right?
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah,
you're not punk, and I'm telling everyone. But it's like when
we're that guy.
Finally,
we're the one who's telling everyone.
Go, right. When you finally let go of that impulse, it is so freeing to just be like, yeah, I listened to chiptune or techno.
Yeah.
On my way to the function, like I don't even care what you think about that, like, because I enjoyed it, it made my brain go burr, and it was nice. I like that music, or I like listening to uh, what is considered typically like uh, a hipster band, or a kind of like a cheesy indie rock band,
Yeah.
or whatever. And it's like, listen to what you like. If you enjoy a certain kind of music that other people find wimpy or whatever, who cares? It makes you happy. And the same thing goes on the other direction. It's like, if you like stuff that people would consider harsh noise, who cares?
Yeah, right. I think
It, it makes your brain go burr.
yeah, I think there's that benefit to there's the cursed benefit, I think, that where it does good for like curation, and it gets people to really think about it, having that sort of passion. You know,
Hmm.
I sometimes wish games had more like video game hipsterism, and pretension.
Sure.
I wish there was
Yeah, no, absolutely.
we could use more like critical voices being obnoxious about things sometimes, and being like, "Oh my god, I can't believe like." Yeah, I can't believe you're playing these really obvious games. Like these these games are clearly just like, oh, you're playing the next spiritual successor to X game that doesn't actually create anything new and is just a hollow reverberation of said game. That's nice. Why not you just
Wow, I
play?
can't believe you played Armored Core 6.
Yeah, exactly,
It's the sixth one.
dude. Well, yeah, wake me up when you've played Echo Knight, dude. All right,
Right.
that's me. Wake me up when you played Echo Knight. Seriously, Echo Knight.
Somebody just heard me say it's the sixth one,
Yeah.
and are just seething because it isn't.
No, it's like the 18th one.
It's
I
the
I was
18th
I
part.
I did also was gonna I caught myself gonna correct you. Like technically, Armored Core kind of works in cycles where there's like 2 to 3 Armored Cores per numbered entry.
Right. You're just pushing up your glasses, like, actually.
Yeah. Excuse me. You're. We need some of that though. We need like. I thought jokingly occasionally about like what would be, half jokingly, half earnestly, like what would be the games on the video game version of LCD Sound Systems losing my edge. Are
Yeah.
are there enough video games to put there?
I think there are. I mean,
Yeah.
like, the indie space is always so. Like, even when you look past, like, kind of what the popular critical
Yeah,
darlings are, there's weird shit out there.
Right there,
And it's in a good way.
we still have like our offs and our a lot of these people came from like I'm doing a project where someone was talking about the games they had previously made, and they talking about how they made ROM check fail, and I was like, oh my god, ROM check fail.
Wow.
Taking me
That's
back.
impressive.
Uh,
I have a
yeah.
gripe, actually, about that. Did you know
Yeah.
that, not about, but specifically about indie games, did you know that this year's Golden Joystick nominee for Best Indie Game is a game made by the Korean mega corporation Nexon?
Oh yeah, are we talking Dave the Diver?
Dave the Diver.
Do you know there's a do you know there's a yearly Indiepocalypse award that doesn't even nominate Indiepocalypse?
It's incredible to me that like what we would consider to be like a massive studio
Yeah.
is made a game that everybody thinks is indie because it's pixelated and it's got quirky writing,
Yes.
and it's like it's the same thing as Hi-Fi Rush to me in a lot of
Yes.
ways, where Hi-Fi Rush was made by literally the developer of The Evil Within,
Right.
one of the games of all time,
I
like one of the video games of all time.
I recently played those. I kind of love those Evil Within games.
I do too, but I mean,
Yeah.
they are very much like a AAA version of Silent Hill or
Right.
of Resident Evil.
This is what's his face? I'm blanking on his name now.
Shinji Mikami.
This is Shinji Mikami making Resident Evil 4 2.
Right. Would just like, I have so many dollars at my disposal. Let me just make this.
Yeah.
And Hi-Fi Rush is like this goofy, quirky, kind of hokey writing, with very cartoonish and colorful, like Saturday morning cartoon art style, and a very hopeful story. and people called it an indie game, and I'm like, how are you what are you talking about?
Right.
It is a Microsoft first party game.
Yeah,
So
they're
then that
indie games
that
were
kind of
used.
goes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that goes back to what you said earlier about defining it more by budget than
Yeah.
by budgeted versus non-budgeted.
Yeah.
Because now it's kind of like indie games is like an aesthetic as opposed to like whether it's actually a small studio in terms of how the public thinks of it.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
the game I recently played, Chance of Sonar, I think it's a great game, but it's being marketed as an indie game, and it's being published by Focus Entertainment.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the movie, what?
Yeah, and
it's bizarre.
yeah, because I mean, movies also have this like sliding scale of indie as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Like the A24s and the Annapurnas and the
yeah,
so on and so
who
forth.
are also getting into indie game publishing.
Yeah, Annapurna developed
or in and out of indie game publishing.
I have thoughts. I have complicated thoughts about the Annapurna directed or produced video games. Some of them are very good. A lot of them are not.
Was the 17? What was that? 17 minutes. 17. What was that game? Was that Annapurna?
12 minutes.
Yeah.
12 minutes was Annapurna, and it was. To excuse my language, it was dog shit.
To hear people writing about it sometimes, it sometimes sounds like a parody of like high thought indie games or whatever.
It's like let's take a Jonathan Blow concept and truly make it horrifying. It's really bad, and even if it's not like horrifying to behold,
Yeah.
like there is this one game, The Artful Escape, that I played that was published by them.
Yeah.
We're talking about hipster, right? The main character is the son or the grandson of essentially Bob Dylan, and he has to reckon with the fact that everyone expects him to also play folk music, because that's all Bob Dylan is.
Right.
And he goes on this magical, mystical, psychedelic journey to discover arena rock. I'm not joking you.
No,
That is what happens.
I'm looking at the cover. It's like that's what it looks like. It's like you could have just like, not to be mean to people who made this game, but you could have spent like take 2 hours of your life and watch fucking like Inside Llewyn Davis or something. Like it's you don't even have to watch you don't even have to watch the Dylan movie.
Like Inside Llewyn Davis, you watch any number of rock documentaries from the 80s. My band, this band or Van Could Be Your Life, Decline of Western Civilization. Just like one of them, and like make anything else. I was so mad for irrational reasons at that one. The Artful Escape.
Go to your local theater right now. It'll probably be empty. Go watch Stop Making
Sense. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man,
David Byrne in a big suit. What's better than that?
Nothing. There are a few things in life better than David Byrne in his giant suit. I think that's part of like. It is that thing where it's like surface level scraping of influences,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
And like not having interesting taste is the meanest way to say it.
Yeah.
That is the meanest thing to say. But maybe the truest thing is that like the main problem with like creators in video games is that they have no taste or they have boring taste.
Well, it was very interesting, right? So leading up to Armored Core, there was we all know. Maybe we don't.
Yeah.
Austin Walker.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Okay. Austin Walker, big fan of Armored Core. Recently switched from being a game critic to going into the games industry. Works at Possibility Space.
Oh, so he wants to. So he decided he's like, I would like to make money. I would like to work.
Roughly.
I would like to work and get paid for it, as so many game critics are off to do.
Exactly, but when Armored Core was first announced, when the first trailer dropped for Armored Core 6, he put out an kind of AMV of the trailer where
Yeah.
he replaced it with Annie Up, the hip hop song. And what kind of followed was this very interesting discussion about how sick it would be if like Armored Core or a mech game in general had a hip hop soundtrack, and how
Yeah.
there would really not be anyone in the industry with that kind of taste to like really make it a good like greatest hits hip hop soundtrack.
Yeah.
And I think that really kind of falls into, it's like when we talk about indie in general, right? Independent music, independent games. It's describing a very narrow set of tastes that ends up being kind of one note, samey, and a little bit like played out.
Yeah, like there is often a breakthrough act, and then there's runoff of said breakthrough act. Your
And yeah,
your
and like what I
Joyce
love,
Manners or whatever.
like what I love about
yeah.
visual novels and sort of micro indie games in general is just like that's where all the experimentation's happening.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see that celebrated with stuff like Indiepocalypse.
Trying to sneak a compliment. I will not take that compliment. I will.
Well, fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to take the damn compliment, but I'm
no,
being
no.
serious. No, I'm kidding.
I try to get better about not hating the thing that I make. Even like not, I do like it, but there is that kind of like I feel like I need to dislike it for show.
No, for sure. It's that impulse to be like, oh well, it's not actually as important
Right.
or
That
whatever.
kind of like front of like, well, if I like it, I'll be called arrogant, and I was once actually. The one time, the last time I was like, oh, I like this thing. I think it's an important piece of small press within games, and
Somebody called you arrogant.
Someone made a whole post about it.
Oh boy.
They missed the point though. Someone showed it to me later, and I read it, and they fully missed the point. It seemed like they just did not like me and was using it as a good jumping stone.
Well, I mean that's what it is for
Yeah.
sure.
But I was like, this is a really weird approach. Like this is like even within the best worst faith reading of this thing, you still miss the point. And you were saying your own thing. But anyway. Also, Hi-Fi Rush, the Black Keys, what are you doing?
It truly had a strange soundtrack.
Yeah, it's got. Let me look at this. I'm gonna look at the soundtrack.
I think there's Machine Girl on there, or no, Number Girl,
Yeah.
and there's a Nine Inch Nails song.
Yeah.
There's no, like, there is some connection between those bands, like, sort of
I'm always thinking
stylistically.
I'm always thinking like Nine Inch Nails, The Joy Formidable, Flaming Lips. That's my.
But I mean, literally, what is? Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh yeah, I was like that was naming bands
Soundtrack.
off it. We got Prodigy. The Prodigy.
For Lord have mercy. There's this one song, or there's one song on here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting.
Like, that's Billy Corgan. Why do we have a Billy Corgan band on here? It's so weird.
Yeah, it's also like American music filtered through like a Japanese studio.
Yeah.
And like because what is big in Japan? What are huge? That's like a whole entirely different culture outside of like the U.S. of like what hits hard over there.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, Hi-Fi Rush was developed or was produced or directed by an American.
Oh.
Like underling of Mikami's.
Yeah.
Mikami was present on the project, but he wasn't like responsible for a lot of the development of it.
And I'm seeing a lot of these producers and designers are, other, it's a mixed studio.
Yeah.
But
I just do find it funny that we got Hi-Fi Rush in the same year that we got Bomb Rush Cyberpunk.
Ooh, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. I've never played that game. I'm sure it's fine.
It is. It is just weird that we're getting like these very specific callbacks to PlayStation 2 / Dreamcast era games.
Yeah. Now,
like Jet Set, like why are we getting the Jet Set Radio spiritual successor in 2023? What's up with that?
the people
Let's maybe unpack that for a second.
I think it's an age thing, right? The people who played Jet Set Radio now can fund studios.
Yeah, they want to make it again.
Yeah.
And like, to be fair, I've heard nothing but good things about Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, but it's just like, huh?
Let's just say that's the kind of thing I'll check in on in 5 years.
Yeah.
And then wonder if like, I'll just play Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio even.
Yeah.
And that's like that is a very weird thing about video games because they're so bad about re-releasing old works is that people quote unquote re-release them by just making a new kind of version of them. They they file off the serial number and call it theirs.
Turns into a fan work.
Yeah, that's a weird thing where it's like if we still had like the same thing where if I could just go buy, like I could just buy DVDs of movies forever, would we have so many of these spiritual successors? I don't know, honestly.
It is weird.
If that's the kind of stuff was so easily accessible. Like I'm looking at, I'm just in my step off. I was like, oh, Perfect Drug. What album is Perfect Drug? I was like, oh, that was made for Lost Highway. I was like, now I'm thinking like, if I couldn't get Lost Highway, if Lost Highway was just like I had to go to torrent sites to get it, and like same with like if all of Lynch's stuff was just like video game style not available, would we have people being like, oh, I'm making basically someone making a new film version of Lost Highway that's basically just Lost Highway but made by somebody else because we can't get Lost Highway now,
Right.
Which is what like a lot of these sort of like games end up being.
Yeah, I think that's true. Oh, go ahead.
Homage, preservation combined into nostalgia kind of thing going on.
Yeah, exactly. It is this kind of weird nostalgic interpretation of something. Yeah, it's very strange. But
it is.
Anyway, Mobius strips. Lost Highway's a Mobius strip. I wish I could. Nothing has stuck out to me more than the sentiment of I too wish I could drive along the West Texas highway like it were a Mobius strip. I have a strong. I wish I could drive forever. Sometimes that kind of sentiment, I think, is kind of like why you need personal art. Anyway, that said, I'm shutting the private browsing window. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, oh, we're over 2 hours. That's a good amount of time to the show to be going. So we are going to. We're gonna wrap up the show. We're gonna wrap it up. Call it a show before I just start rambling about like, I don't know, the mountain goats. Who knows?
The mountain goats. No, I like the mountain goats just fine.
I think they're cool. I think it's a cool band. It's like a guy just like liking the things that he likes.
We just have to have takes.
Yeah.
I have to have a strong take about something, even though I don't
have a strong take. That's the internet brain like poisoning you.
Oh, I'm 100% brain poisoned.
I'm
ruined by the internet.
I was, and I've detoxed. I'm feeling healthy. I'm happy. I'm healthy.
I fucking started tweeting in 2009. I'm too far gone.
Yeah. No, there's always hope for you. It's like there's always like I found like I think actually the For You tab is like great detox. The Twitter
just selling me on on 12-step program for
No,
Twitter.
yeah. Well, okay. Here's the thing: for anyone out there who's a little social media brain, the For You tab's super helpful because you look at it, you go, "What are these people talking about? Why? None of this matters." This is like you get snippets of drama that you were like light years removed from, and then you realize, oh, this thing that I don't understand that's a million years removed from me, that is part of the online pottery scene discourse. That's the same as the video game discourse. Oh, wait a minute. It's all bullshit we made up.
Yeah.
And it's people coming off, unhinged and half cocked and yelling about things because they can immediately and because it gets you likes. And if you just like sat down and relaxed, and you're like, would I talk to another human being in person like this? And the answer is like usually no.
Yeah.
So then you can relax and use social media as strictly a way to like hang out and like meet people and then talk to them. Invent a radio show where you actually talk to them meaningfully. And also mute people. Muting people is great. Even muting people that you like is a great thing. Muting people that you like, but you don't like the way they use social media. It's a great way. It's a great thing.
I was genuinely eating shit on Blue Sky for a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, for anyone who isn't familiar with it, you should not go to it. Don't ask for a code. Don't try to get on there. It's not worth it.
Wait,
but
yes, go ahead. I'll give a nice counterpoint to that.
It is nice in the sense that like a lot of games industry people have moved over there, and so you can we have an Insta community already set up. But like, if you don't need to be there, you don't have to be there. Anyway, I was eating it so hard, just every day coming on and seeing drama after discourse after drama. And I had it. I was so done. So what I did was I used one of the many tools that analyzes blue sky data that people made, like trying to figure out all sorts of nonsense. And I looked up who had the most posts. And I made a rule. It's like, if you have more than like 10,000 or 15,000 posts, I'm blocking you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if I know you. I don't care if we've ever interacted or if I've ever even seen your posts. And there were people who were obviously, it's like some of the center of the worst like discourses and drama episodes, who had posted, and this is a site that has only been active since like February. 32,000 times.
Yes, I had seen some of those counts on people's profiles. I'm like, what are you people doing?
What, like, do you sleep?
Yeah.
Are you leaving your house? Because I'm going to work. I'm writing things on No Escape. I'm doing other things. I've posted since May, almost 2,000 times, and I'm thinking that's a lot of posts. They're out here like, nah, we're gonna dwarf that. 32 grand. I'm like, no. You have to leave. I'm blocking every single person that has something like this.
Yes, truly.
And my feed has quieted down so significantly that it's almost like being on Twitter pre Elon Musk.
Yeah, I will. Here's my counterpoint advice is sign up for every single social media site, and do you want to take a guess at how many posts I've had? I'm also a very early adopter for Blue Sky.
You have probably 200 posts, if that.
61.
That's, yeah. Like, I was thinking on the liberal level, that's how many posts you like. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I'd say do it. Just like go there, post the thing you need to post, use it as an advertising platform, and then walk away. Go outside, touch grass, as they say. I was digging the other day. Just go dig. Go dig.
Go dig a hole.
I was doing it for purpose. I was more moving dirt, but still, get in touch with the primal human desire to dig holes to no end, no particular end.
I'd like to dig a hole.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to like dig a hole in your life. I think
Dude, that brings me back to
Yeah.
being young and just being a kid and just being like, this here, this spot.
yes.
This is where the hole goes. Right here. Dig it up. See what's under the dirt.
You might find an old dog grave.
Oh, God.
Oh,
I-
that's
I think I found one of those once. And I only realized like decades later in life that's what I found. That's what we found when we were digging in our backyard because we found like
So
a
bleak.
collar,
oh no,
like a ratty
oh god.
collar, but we had no context for it as like 10-year-olds or whatever. And we just thought it was trash. But then I realized later, burying a pet, I was like, oh,
That's where the collar went.
this is a pet grave.
Oh.
But yeah, I always think of my own personal version of touch grass. I think about there's the that Flex Mentallo comic.
Mhm.
Towards the end, there's a line where the titular Flex Mentallo, who is of course he's like an amalgamation of metatextual comic stuff and Charles Atlas. It's fun. I like him. I think him.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy. But there is a line where he says, being clever is all well and good, but sometimes a fellow needs to get out of the house and meet some girls. And I think that whenever I see people posting too much.
That is truly a thought for the ages, honestly. Like genuinely.
Yeah, it is.
Being clever is all well and good, but sometimes a fellow just needs to go outside and meet girls.
It's
good.
it's what I think about. The two things in comics I think about the most are that and that old I'm drawing a blank on his. Welcome to my name's drawing a blank, but this is very easy to search because he's the guy who made Kataro. Which is Shigeru Mizuki made a comic about like talking about other like his contemporaries like Tezuka and stuff like that, and he's like they were bragging about all these guys were bragging about how they pulled all nighters and they had 2 hours of sleep, and look at them, they're all dead now. And Mizuki lived till he was like 99, and he was like, I slept, I got 8 hours of sleep every night. I got like, I lived my life. I enjoyed things. And yeah, he lived till he was 93, and Tezuka was like what, like 50.
That's the fuck of it too. Is just like when you decide that you kind of want to become like somebody who translates like your personal life experiences into some kind of art. You go from experiencing things to writing about experiencing things in some way, and
Yeah.
you lose out on the actual act of experience. Like it's very strange how going from just kind of playing games and blogging about them to this is what I do
Right.
has really changed that relationship, and where it's made it more like, okay, so yeah, I'm at work basically when I'm playing a game, and now it's not. It's a very weird thing. It's a
Yeah.
very weird thing. Don't make the thing that you like your job or like a main sort of identity marker.
Yeah, that is. I mean, my third comic touchstone is Eddie Campbell's "The Years Have Pants," and he's like kind of a autobio series where he's talking about he was working at like a sheet metal factory. And his boss was like, "Why?" He's talking about his boss was like, "Why are you doing this?" He's like, "Well, it gives me I don't have to think about it,
Yeah, just making sheet metal.
Yeah, it gives me time to like reflect and like kind of like just like chill and relax and not have to worry about like, if you're doing art all day, if you could theoretically get a job doing like making advertisement art and that kind of thing, and then going home and then having to make your own comics, it's like you get exhausted,
Right.
But if you're just pounding sheet metal all day, cutting sheet metal, and then you go home, it's like, no more sheet metal. It's time for comics. Anyway, Power of Sleep. If you look up the Power of Sleep, that's the Shigeru Mizuki, like one pager where he's just like, it's got good expressions too. I mean, and also for what it's worth, I think Mizuki's better than Tezuka and those guys anyway. So, double joke on them. I think his stuff perseveres better. Anyway, and the dude had one arm too. Lost his arm in the war.
That is impressive.
Yeah, It's chronicled in parts of the onwards towards our noble deaths. Anyway, that's Andrew's comic corner for the moment. Read Shooting Mizuki. He's good. Bold takes here. Anyway, actually wrapping up the show now, because once I almost popped that, I threatened to pop that little cork where I just start talking about comic books, which I read a lot of. The sense of scale in Fist of the North Star is nuts, and I'm in love with it. It's like so all over the place, and I'm like, I want to make a game that like captures like these visual style, like it's like one panel's like clearly these guys are about the same size, but then you have this panel of this fist that is like there's just this fist is like 3 times the size of Kenshiro's body, like coming on his head. And it's like the scale is all over the place in such like this expressive style. It's so cool. But I also really do like genre pulpy stuff sometimes too. You know, I love pieces of genre. Anyway, we're wrapping up the show. This is officially wrapping up the show. So this is the part, if you've listened to radio shows before, you know what's coming up. The shows, occasionally I think, like, what if the show had segments? But I would have to come up with them. And I'm not going to do that. Because that would require too much effort into the show that I worry that, like, I'm not just a curator, I am a creative as well. So I having this at a distance is nice because I can be, like, not obsess over, am I doing this good, you know?
Yeah.
And I can just like enjoy my time with it. But that said, it's the segment that all podcasts have where people promote their work. So we're going to go around the circle. If you're, the live circle, Evie, where can people find your stuff if they want to look for it after the show?
Okay, so I have all of my stuff on my itch.io account, which is just called Ebby Hime. And then I also have a Steam developer account as well, where I have all of my commercial stuff and some of my more popular free things. And I also have a Twitter, which I guess is now X.
Yes, your X account.
But that's a stupid name, so I just call it Twitter.
Yeah,
and,
the website still calls it Twitter too, so...
It does. I mean, it seems to kind of go back and forth between it. Like, sometimes when people link me via Twitter, sometimes it's Twitter, sometimes it's X. Who knows? And I also have a Mastodon account as well, but I don't use that too much.
Yeah, that one seems more... confusing in how it works. It feels halfway between social media and like forums, I guess.
I also got more people being rude to me on Mastodon, and I've only been on it for like a few months, and I haven't Twitter using it for like 7 or 8 years. So
Mastodon, there are a lot of places that it's weird because there are some places who like the aura of the website is like way worse. Like X, for example, but the aura of the user base is off-putting, like Mastodon. Even though, like, this is technically a better service, but boy, a lot of these people on here are really irritating. Except for the people, social media sites, they're confusing because they're just a clump of people together. Of course, you're going to find people you don't like. It's not self-selecting. But yeah, I would my advice, just block them. Just block them.
I did just block them. Yeah. Well, I mean, they weren't just being like obnoxious. Like, they sent me like actual like homophobic slurs, and I was like, no, I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah, that's a whole other...
I'm blocking you.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah. That is, there's like, it's very annoying trying to find like, because people are trying to, these inherently no social media sites are like forums. Like they don't have, there's no on topic site, but people are trying to like, they think that their version of Twitter, Mastodon, etc. has to be the correct version, and then they are very rude to people who are not making that version when you can just ignore that person. That's how they work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyway, social media. My standby advice: go there for 5 minutes, post what you want to post, and then leave. And then then I guess still sometimes you do get people being shitty to you that you can't avoid you can't like pre-avoid it, I guess.
Yeah.
Andrea,
Yes.
what's up? Where can people find your stuff?
I'm also on itch at, Andrea Blythe, one word. I'm also Andrea Blythe, most social media sites that you can find me, including Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and the site formerly known as Twitter.
At .com
And
even.
yep, and AndreaBlythe.com for my poetry and fiction stuff. And I have another website that's AndreaBlythe-games.com for keeping up with all, portfolio kind of site stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably spread too thin too many places, but like I also can't help myself, so I go through waves of posting shit and then not posting stuff for weeks and then it's come back around again.
Fuck,
That's-
that's relatable. God damn it.
That's what I generally do. Except for me, that's like my goal. I can't. I've been looking for this panel. I can't find this panel. Do I have to do I have to go take a picture myself to get it? I may have to. I may have to be the one that puts this panel on the internet. Anyway, I do one of these days. I want to commission someone to make a Charles Atlas style ad for Indiepocalypse. The insult that made a man out of Mac. But for indie games. But speaking of games and writing, where can people find your work?
That's a great question. So, a couple things that I wanted to push. First of
Yes.
all, if you want to find all the places that I am on social media, you can go to Linktree at linktr.ee/noescapevg. It's just easier than me reading off my co-host and my Tumblr and my
Yeah.
Substack and my Mastodon and my and on and on and on. So
Yeah.
it's all there.
There's a podcast I've regularly listened to where the host says to find me, look up my name.
Right. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say that tomorrow, actually, No Escape is starting its Patreon drive thing. There will be more information about it tomorrow, but we are looking for support on Patreon to get back into the swing of doing contributors rather than just me being weird every couple weeks on
Yeah.
the site. So yeah, if you want to drop us a couple bucks, patreon.com/noescapevg. If you like what we do and want to see us continue and have more people contribute to it, that's kind of the gist of it. But it always feels weird doing that kind of promotion, especially on another like kind of Patreon supported show, because it's like, am I really worth it? And I decided this year,
yeah.
I've made it to 4 years. If it wasn't worth it, I wouldn't be doing it at this point. So yes, it is worth it.
And listen, Kyle, this is Indiepocalypse is day job supported.
Yes.
Patreon helped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the same boat. So
yeah, right. if I only had my Patreon, Indiepocalypse would end tomorrow. Like it is
Yeah.
it is fully funded by the fact that I have a job.
Exactly. That is incredibly relatable.
Yeah.
But no, that's really about it.
Perfect.
If you go to the link tree, you can also find a place to join my Discord server and talk with us and all that other stuff. So
yeah, if you're from Indiepocalypse, you're like, wow, what if there was a Discord server where people talked?
Yeah.
And don't make it the Indiepocalypse one. I like that no one talks on there.
I'm gonna follow the Indiepocalypse one and just enjoy the fact that everyone's very chill and quiet.
You'll get occasional people doing promo, and then you'll get me making my announcements once a week and once a month for the new releases in the radio show.
Nice.
But there was people got into an argument once while I was working at a flea, at the aforementioned Hassle Flea, and I was like, I'm not dealing with this, so I just locked posting down, and then I unlocked it after I was done, and then people have been a lot quieter, and are like, that's nice. I'm not interested in forming a community, if that makes sense.
I feel that.
I just like I want to create a space of awareness, you know. Like when I have 3 people on the show, I want to be like, oh, maybe these people will become aware of each other, but they're not like required to and then go to a Discord and chat with each other constantly. It can be like the kind of vibe of, oh, we see each other once a year at a convention, and then we wave, and then that's our interaction, but we have a nice thought of one another.
Indiepocalypse, promoting acquaintanceships.
Yes, people you need, as someone who is cold and distant, I encourage more acquaintanceships in the world. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that is. I feel like I need to at some point to put like a mea culpa post on all social media sites. It's like, thank you for sharing my work. I know I don't interact with people or share things with people because that's just not how I socialize.
Yeah.
I'm never online, so come on my radio show once a week or catch me in person. But that said, speaking of Indiepocalypse, that's me. I think you should buy Indiepocalypse. I think it's cool. When you buy it, people like these nice people here, 2/3 of the nice people here, although they're all nice people, but only 2 of them get money when people buy Indiepocalypse.
You should do that for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let me see. I sent out a recent spat of royalties. Did either of you get one of those little bits of them? I don't remember.
I did.
Ooh, yes. So look at that. Every so often, Andrew, as of a couple of days ago, probably got like $6.50 or something.
That was probably about it. I was like, ooh, a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly. That is the Indiepocalypse $6 promise is like upfront developers get like $20, and then afterwards they get like a good 40 to 50 to 70-ish, depending on how well the sales go. And then every year, half a year, they get like $6 or $7, which is more money than they had previously, you know?
To be honest, considering I made a game for my own purposes and pleasure and am getting any money out of it at all since I released it for free, it's an absolute delight.
That's what I'm hoping. Like people this was born out of me being like, part of the reason I really wanted to do royalties, besides it feels awkward to and unethical to profit of other people's work, you know. I like the idea of, even if you get nothing, you know, listening to people, actors and writers, and being like on podcasts, being like, I got 6 cents in royalties, which is, as you could tell by recent strikes, not a lot of money, but it is more money than I feel like you could get within like this video game space, you know? And it's nice, I think, to have like a expectation of royalties, to kind of like build in that expectation of royalties, even if it is like 8%, which is 8% is not, you know, I mean, you can only split 10, you only split it so many ways, you know. But folks, that's all a long way to say you can go to indiepocalypse.com, my own damn website, and buy things off my own damn website. You can get them on itch too if you're more familiar, if you prefer that. But you can get them say, for instance, itch were to be purchased, and be purchased is a strange way. It's a very strange way that people always phrase these kind of things, because if Epic wanted to come buy Indiepocalypse tomorrow, I could just say no. Like, these things aren't purchased, they're sold, you know. These companies are sold to other companies. It is a conscious effort from the person within power of that company choosing that to have their company purchased. It's not a hostile takeover, you know. And I mean, that requires like shareholders and stock markets and all that stuff.
Tim Sweeney out here sipping from his big gulp, trying to be scheming to steal Indiepocalypse out from under you.
He can't because I just say no. And he's like, fuming. It's like
he takes you to court, like he took Apple to court, just like, I'm a little guy, I'm the underdog, and I want Indiepocalypse.
And he's like, no, because it's like, if someone approached you on the street and was like, I would like to buy your shirt from you, and you're like, no, they can't be like, well, I have $80 million. And he's like, well, I said no. You can't do it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. That's just like not how. I'm sure there is some stuff that I am ignorant to in this situation, but privately held companies, you know what private means, right? It means that people decide when they're bought anyway. Remember that next time. Like it's just there's this strange framing of people purchasing companies, you know.
Mm-hmm.
When maybe those companies they purchase would be insolvent within a year if they were not purchased, and there's all sorts of there's a reason people do it, but you got to think about it all ways. That's all to say. You can buy Indiepocalypse. It's cool. We have physical editions, which I think are super cool. I've got you can get they're in cassette cases with little USB sticks. I also highly encourage any independent developers to do it as well. If you're like go to like local art markets and like zine fairs and stuff, you can bring games and you can sell them, and it's a cool form factor, and people are like, it's cool, and it's also super cheap to do. That's the real ticket there. It's just super cheap. I've got a Patreon, indiepocalypse.com/Patreon. If you're a game developer out there, you're like, I make games. I make game adjacent things. I make a piece of interactive art that exists in some way between myself, where the art communicates with a active participant within the art. Submit it to indiepocalypse.com/submit. I have very loose definitions of games around these parts. Look in my back catalog and you will find very few amounts of little guys running left to right collecting points. And even in some of those cases, I'm drawing a blank on the game. Momentum, I think, is the name of the game. There's a lot of liberal use of little guys running around to expressive extent. There's also the aforementioned Patreon. If you want to get stuff, it's got that classic Patreon. If you buy it in bulk, you get 2 months free. So you could, for instance, and this is the one I like to promote because it feels like the easiest one to promote. There's the regular Indiepocalypse subscription. There's the ones where you get physical stuff, but there's also the cheaper $5 tier, where for just $5 or for just like $50 a year, you get all of the newly commissioned games, and these are cool games. If you want 12 games from the freshest voices in game dev that you may or may not know, made new for Indiepocalypse, you can get it there. That's for less than the price of one $60 AAA video game. You get 12 games. And that's it. I don't think I have anything else. I think that's all the Indiepocalypse stuff. I'm gonna be after next week I'm gonna be taking a 2-week break because I'm gonna be going to Providence on one Saturday and then Toronto the next Saturday. So that's less common. So if you're in the Toronto area and you want to get some Indiepocalypse in person, head over to Canzine on the 22nd. I'll be there. I'm making new zines for it. I'm making a small comic zine. I'm making a new a little bite-sized zine version of Cass's Bad Game Corner. They may even be making something new for it, a little new thing. I think I'm gonna make a zine of my top 10 lists and some of my own personal writing about games, my double feature kind of stuff I've been doing. Just excited, just I'm trying to. Anyway, that's it. That's the show. I could talk forever, and I'm not going to keep on talking. Kyle, Andrea, Abby, thank you all for being here on the show. Thank you for making games, writing games, being in the game space in general, persevering through this all. I just learned today that Shortbox is closing. I didn't know Shortbox was closing at the end of the year.
Bleak.
It is.
Ugh.
That's true. I mean, I think they'll still be doing the comic fair every year, so long as it's sustainable. But Shortbox is a publisher. R.I.P. to a real one, another real one. my joking goal is to outlive POW Comics, so I have to go over a decade, and then I can, then after that, if I choose, I can call it quits. But I like small press publishers, and I hate to see them go. You know,
Absolutely.
it's a cool space.
Yeah.
And I say this as if you're watching live, the Koosh collab issue was just up there. Koosh, also cool. I'd recommend supporting them. Anyway, if you want Latvian-based alt comics from all over, a Latvian-based publisher with alt comics from all over the world that is like of the Indiepocalypse vibe, I don't think you can do much better than Koosh Comics. That is my closest analogy in like the game space to another art medium, and something I kind of strive to be like. That's my true aspiration. My true white whale is being like Koosh. Anyway, that said, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.